I'm the better looking one, so we'll just, Well, it's really great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm pleased I didn't go to the other building because it would have just been a lot of rocks, so it's good to be here. I just want to start off by thanking you for being some of the most vulnerable people in our community. Now, before I continue, I'll give you some background. My husband and I have been senior leaders of Ashburton New Life for 8 years, and last year I decided that it was probably about time I recreated who I was. And what would that look like, and what would I do, and who did I really want to become? So, as we thought about that, I decided on a couple of opportunities, and there were 3 significant factors that have come about from that. The second significant factor was I chose to study at Nelson in MIT. This year I'm doing a postgraduate certificate in professional supervision. And I also this year received a leadership development scholarship through Advance Ashburton to train in research by Professor Brené Brown on vulnerability. That process has changed and reshaped me a lot. But some of you might be wondering why I missed the first significant factor. Others of you may have thought, gee, it's that hot, I've nodded off already. But the first significant factor in reshaping who I was and creating myself as a different professional than what I was at the beginning of the year has to be embrace vulnerability. And what I've learned about vulnerability is that it creates incredible people and incredible leaders. Brené Brown says, vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. There is actually no courage without being vulnerable. Theodore Roosevelt said, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man in the arena whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. And so, I thank you for daring greatly and being incredibly vulnerable, because vulnerability to me was about weakness. That's what I believed it was. It was about full disclosure of all the nitty-gritties of what is generally kept behind closed doors or social media, one or the other. Or it was trying to stay away from it as best that I could. But what I realised is that when I could embrace vulnerable, when I could do awkward, when I could be in a place that was going to push me, then I would really achieve who I was going to be, and then I would see true courage. So I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to let you dare greatly in your meeting this afternoon. Father, thank you for these incredible people who many are looking at re-election positions, Father, and they find themselves in the arena of this community, doing the mahi, turning up, and being the best person that they can be. Father, I pray that they would embrace what might feel awkward. They would embrace vulnerability. And as they journey through today's meeting and the weeks ahead, I pray that you would really reveal to them just how courageous in leadership they truly are. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And Lisa, on a personal note to the New Life Church, can I thank you and your church for opening the doors on the 15th of March when our community was feeling vulnerable and we needed guidance. It was greatly appreciated. So thank you. Councillors, we are now on to the matter of extraordinary business. I know of none, but Does anyone have extraordinary business for today's agenda? There being none, I now ask for declarations of interest. There being none, I'm now looking at the minutes of the previous meeting, which was the council meeting 27th of June, and that the minutes are on page number 1 through to page number, ooh, it keeps going, page number 11. Are there any amendments to the minutes, please? There being none, I'm happy to move that they are a true and accurate record. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bell?
I'd like to second that. Thank you.
Okay. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. The minutes for the extraordinary council meeting of the 25th of July, pages 12 to 13. Any amendments in those? Then I'm also happy to move those minutes. Councillor Rawlinson?
Thank you. I'll second that.
Okay. That the minutes of the 25th of July extraordinary council meeting be taken as read and confirmed. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Councillor Reveley.
Okay, I'll move that the Environmental Services Committee meeting on Thursday, the 25th of July 1990 be received.
Excellent. Councillor Malcolm.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. I've gone too far, haven't I? I'll do those two and then I'll go back. Next, we have the service delivery minutes for the meeting of the 25th of July, page number 16. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move the Service Delivery Committee meeting held on the 25th of July be received.
Councillor Lovett.
I'll second that. Thank you.
Okay. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Page number 19. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the minutes of the Finance and Business Support Committee of Thursday, the 1st of August 2019 be received.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Bell?
I'd like to second that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Councillors, I'd now like to invite Sean Pont from...
Should we do the recommendation?
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Thank you very much. I'm looking at 2 bits of paper. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. 5.1. Councillor Ellis.
I would like to move recommendation 5.1, 1 and 2 as written.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Brahm.
I second that, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. The matter is now open for debate. There being none, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay. Now, I'd like to invite Sean Pont from the Logic Group and Trevor Watt from Athfield Architects, who will introduce... Oh, and John. Welcome, John. Please come and join us. And we're very excited to have an update on the Ashburton Library and Civic Centre project. And we are in your hands, Sean.
Okay, thank you. So today we just wanted to present a bit of a major milestone on the project to the wider council, a bit of an update around the design and how that's progressed over recent months, to look at what is the refined concept for the new development going forward. So it's pretty exciting presentation we've got here. And also probably just take this time to just quickly provide an update around the physical works on site, which are progressing progressing well and on program. So those of you who have been past the site recently, you'll see there's not much of the old county building left, and they're now moving through to progress the demolition of the Paul May Motors building, and then that will be followed by the former church hall. So that all remains on track and on program. So I'll pass over to Trevor Watt from Athfields to go through the updated design concept.
Thanks, Sean. Yes, thanks for the opportunity to present where we are with the design for the library and the admin building. It's an exciting sort of project, so it's sort of over the last sort of month or two sort of progressing quite nicely. So it was a good opportunity to get some sort of feedback with where the design is at. So I guess that starting point is always looking at the existing context. It's been a key sort of drive for the design of the building itself. It's not just the building, but looking at how the building informs the immediate sort of surroundings and the context. So the area of the site is in the heavy blue line, with the orange buildings being currently demolished to clear the site, remaining the blue buildings there being the character buildings, which obviously provide some significance to inform the design as well. The other aspect is the top of the page there is where north is, so it's sort of on the 45, and the sun sort of diagrams tracking around there from where it rises in the summer is the larger sort of arc, and where it rises in the middle winter is that sort of smaller arc. So that's sort of something we'll be sort of conscious of with developing this design, is seeing how it relates to the different spaces around. So an important part has been the character buildings, if you like, around the site, which are all sort of brick buildings. So obviously you've got the church, the future extension to the church, Pioneer Hall and 255. So it's something that we're working our way through, how the building sort of touches or is adjacent to all those buildings, and some sort of important edges to work to. From the beginning, we sort of developed sort of 13 sort of key design principles, which are sort of all encaptured in this one sort of quite busy slide. But we always saw that the connection with the bearing square was really important with the position of the building. So bringing the building up to that edge and also to the corner, similar to what the current county building had done. It's still a little bit there. Having sort of, it's a large building, so breaking that building down into forms, so having simple sort of linked buildings. Important aspect was having courtyards. So obviously we have a significant courtyard to the north and west, but we're also quite keen to have a kind of a morning dominated courtyard and having the building wrapping around it. And that sort of, there were some important links back to, I guess, the existing library when it was built had a courtyard as well. So there was some nice connections to the history. The large space in front, the bearing square, is actually looking at how do you actually inhabit that space. So sometimes the building design actually informs the habitation outside that building edge. Celebrating the democracy, so I guess it's one of the things the council chambers is an important aspect of these type of buildings, something special about the building, representing the community. So we always see that it's important that those sort of spaces have an external form. There's a small espresso cafe in the brief, so we're looking at providing it on the edge so it can also spill out and break down the boundaries between outside and inside. It's a large building again, and the library is important. There's sort of circulation and loops, so that's conscious of when developing the plan where the stairs go and the like. There's car parking on site, so pulling those to the back so that it's not to the front around the important edges. And importantly, using meaningful use of the character buildings on site, celebrating the connection to nature and obviously those great views to the Alps on the upper levels, and then pulling into providing, I guess, a bit more of a catalyst to urban sort of development in the region. So all those things have been wrapped into our sort of thinking throughout the sort of whole process. So where it's landed as far as conceptually is the library's sort of indicated in the pink area. So it wraps around the courtyard on two sides, on the southern part of the Bearing Square East and Havelock Street, and then the workspace or the admin functions are on the northern part of level 1, and on the level 2 is a large sort of open space work bar. Going too much to the detail of the planning, there's been a lot of focus on how the planning works, but the key for the entry to the building, it's centred on the clock tower and the memorial, so it's quite a strong access sort of coming through and connecting it with the square. So the area in yellow is the welcome space, the foyer information area, and it opens into the customer services, and it also provides an entry to the library itself. So there's another entry into the library from Havelock Street in this location through here. So effectively we have two entries into the building. We're located at the espresso bar on the corner to provide some activation on the edge and also allow it to spill out onto that corner, so it does connect into the township on that edge. And then the library in pink, if you like, sort of wraps around the courtyard, locating the children's area in this location so it can spill out with a good connection to the courtyard. We have a performance space connecting to the courtyard and also a large meeting room connecting to the courtyard. And as we move up the building, so one of the important aspects, I guess, and challenging natures of the project has been the integration of Pioneer Hall. So obviously the site encapsulates that building, and so we did test a whole lot of different options of how we could utilise it. I guess the most important thing with heritage buildings is giving it a functional use. There is some strengthening required, so we're developing up quite a simple strengthening proposal with actually sort of plywood shear walls internally, and keeping as much of the existing heritage fabric as possible. So it's definitely an important part of the project. So we looked at it a little bit, I guess, out of the box, if you like, to try and integrate this building within the building. So we've got effectively the building sitting partially outside with an external expression. We've actually built the main roof over the top of it. It sits in a void, and that allows us to keep, I guess, it simplifies the structure. It integrates the building into the library space. We've got a large new opening which connects it to the children's area, so there's a nice sort of synergy with what the original use of the building as being a women's restroom or a kids' restroom. But we're looking at giving it opening it up, making it one space, taking the roof off so you can look down into the building, and actually having it as a positive part of the whole library. So it's going to be quite a focal point. We've been looking around the country trying to think of where it's been done before, something like that, and we haven't found another use. We've also sort of tabled this idea with the heritage groups, both the local group and also the Heritage New Zealand and Christchurch, and we've had some pretty positive sort of feedbacks on how this sort of approach is a positive aspect of heritage. So we can include interpretation panels. So yeah, it's something that's a little bit unique, which is quite exciting part of the project.
Excuse me, Trevor, are you happy if we ask questions
Sure.
along the way? So in regards to incorporating this building within the building, I imagine that there are some cost savings, such as there is no restoration of Pioneer Hall required to have it weatherproof, etc. And also some cost savings for our building to build over it rather than around it. Do you have any indication of what those cost savings are?
Yeah, so when we looked at the budgets at the start of the project, we allocated a sum of around $750,000 for the premium and cost associated with upgrading Pioneer Hall, but that sum also included for the complexities of building the new building in and around the existing Pioneer Hall. Previous concepts had essentially 3 facades around the perimeter of what you see as Pioneer Hall there now, whereas this now is we've simplified that by having a single facade at the front. We're not having to strengthen a lot of the external structure like we were planning on doing and having a separate standalone building. So the saving is essentially in the order of around $500,000. So we've reduced our sum of $750,000 for the complexities of that down to $250,000, and that's what's included in the updated budget.
And also means the area that we were going to allow extra has now been included, so we're actually using the building. So that's part of the saving, is actually making the new build area slightly smaller. But we actually think, architecturally, it actually is an exciting part of the project, as rather than sort of being a challenging part. So we think it's a positive sort of result. And you can kind of see it on the level 1 plan, where the Pioneer Hall through here sits within that double height space, and so a little bit of the building sort of pokes out, but most of it's actually inside the main volume. So on level 1 in the pink, again we have the library sort of wrapping around. In the blue we have the workspace. In the centre through here we see the chambers as being that combination which sits between public library space and the admin space. So we've located that between the two, so it can have that sort of, it can change really between a public library function or a governance sort of function. So we do have quite large double height spaces and voids. So the thing with double height libraries is getting good connectivity, getting a number of sort of open stairs to allow easy sort of circulation through those two levels. So one of the interesting things, I'll go through this relatively quickly, is around the security lines. So currently with the two parts of this building sort of operating at two different sort of times, and potentially the chambers working at different times as well. We've been sort of working through a level of detail about which parts of the building sort of open and close at any one time, and conscious that with different aspects of the building closing, you still need access to good stairs and lifts and toilets. So it's been a reasonably challenging part of the project to get that working, and so we're still sort of working through the detail, but and running a few scenarios about at different times the building can shut down with screens or doors or swipe card access. And so that's been an important sort of aspect to sort of work through to make sure we've got, you know, sufficient toilets and stair access and accessibility in the right places. So lots of different sort of scenarios there, with the you know, chambers potentially being open as a public space outside the library and the workspace hours, and how does that work. So we think we've landed in a pretty good location there. I guess the other thing too I haven't really touched on is, I guess it's got a separate emergency operational centre, which is this sort of building in pink down here. So to keep it, I guess, keep the cost down, to keep it simple, we've actually got this a single story building at an importance level 4, and so that's the appropriate level for emergencies like earthquakes and other aspects. It's a self-contained space, so it has its own toilets, kitchenette, comms, and everything like that. So effectively it can run independently of the main building. The main building's aisle 3, so it's reasonably high still. The main building, you know, in an earthquake obviously won't fall down, just may not be usable. So there's a lot of focus on making sure that emergency operations centre is pretty robust. It's got its own generator and it's effectively self-contained if we have another major event. But we also see that that can double up as another large meeting space for, could be resource consent hearings or large meeting spaces or community functions, and it's quite nice that we actually can open that space also into the courtyard to can spill out and start activating that area. On the level 2 is the main admin workspace, so we've been working through that, I guess looking at how modern sort of workspace works, breaking down sort of barriers, having more collaborative type workspace environment and meeting rooms and social sort of areas. Sort of introduced to, we're obviously building quite closely to that north eastern boundary, so we have sort of stepped the facade of that building back and forward a little bit to allow us a deck with good access to morning sun, and also there's a deck with good sort of afternoon sun as well. So features like those decks also help break down and articulate the building facade, rather than just one big sort of block form. No, you can.
Okay, I'm just going to take over here and talk a little bit about the landscape thoughts. We've focused quite a bit on the courtyard and how that really works as a morning space for the building, but also key is Berrien Square as that civic space in front of the library and in front of the civic space. And what we're suggesting here is an approach of how work to Berrien Square could follow on in relation to this building, and and the idea being that it becomes Berrien Square East becomes much more of a shared space, so it's a pedestrian priority space, but still allowing traffic to move through and service all the buildings along it. And we're suggesting there's pretty much 3 distinct forecourts along Berrien Square East. The first one being one in front of primarily the library forecourt, then the civic forecourt that is formed by the axes to the clock tower and the war memorial, and then a third forecourt in front of the church here. And so we're suggesting a lot more amenity to enable people to linger along that front edge. And one of the key parts of the building proposal is that there's a colonnade that runs along the front face of it, providing shelter in inclement weather so that people can walk along the front face of this on bad days. And so this is the sort of the civic square, the cultivated landscape that complements the sort of more rough, like the rough on a golf green over here of the courtyard landscape, which is much more of a harder surface that the building can spill out onto. So on the courtyard, these are just showing the relationships of how the internal planning of the library and the EOC and the meeting spaces can look out into that space, so a space of outlook, which is what the blue arrows are indicating, and then the red arrows are where there's ability for people to go from the outside of the building to the inside of the building. And broadly, the courtyard's a lower area down here in relation to children's, and upper level up here in relation to the civic entry and EOC. That means that there can be kids doing activities outside here on the lower area, and people lounging and enjoying the space up here, and they're not disturbing each other. And then wrapping around it is a large garden wall that is a space that can screen all the car parking through here, and it can also be a space that people can sit against in the sun and look back towards the building. And then from the upper level, the courtyard is a space that the upper levels of the library, which is generally the quieter spaces in the library, can look out and over into, and meeting rooms and workspace from level 2 over into that courtyard. And so the qualities, we think of the courtyard as being a space that is seasonal, so it's got a deciduous tree in it that would in summertime be fully leaved, so to shade the building, and lose its leaves in winter, so that sun's good solar gain in wintertime, and the opportunity for water collection in that main area that tracks the nature of water in the region at the time, so dry in summer and wet in winter. And so this is a axonometric view showing the ground floor of the proposed building. So what you're seeing here is Berrien Square in the foreground, the suggested shared space across Berrien Square East, the church, 255 Havelock Street here, and then the library with the entrance on axis from the clock tower coming through into the service space, and the library spilling down and wrapping around the courtyard. And then zooming in, that shows the relationship to Pioneer Hall that Trevor talked about, and the circulation staircases taking you up through the building. And this is the EOC, a lower building here. And then at the first floor level, again showing the relationship along that edge. You can see this colonnade along the front face of the building. Entrance from Havelock Street, entrance on axes. And then zooming in, you're seeing here the level 1 of the library, so wrapping up with the staircase here and here, so running through along this edge, looking out to the courtyard, onto Havelock Street, out onto Berrien Square, workplace through this area over here, and then the council chambers in the middle here. This expressed externally and legible from the outside, and also with a large window that looks out to the clock tower, which we all know rings on a regular basis. So at least nice to see that source of the noise. And so that sort of way of segueing into exterior materials. So we're very interested in how we can make the building specific to this landscape and to this region. And one point of departure has been the timber structure, which Trevor will talk about soon, but that's going to be one of the really key materials in the building, particularly in the interiors. Externally, some of that timber will come to the outside and be visible. It's got a nice soft quality to it. and we're looking to complement that with good hard-wearing surfaces on the outside for the solid bits of walls. So exploring stone or ceramic textures to those parts, complemented with certain particular special bits, so the council chamber area, the canopies that suggest where the entry is, and we're interested in the grain silos of the region, of the district, and how we can use material such as stainless steel, which is what this image is here, where it's got moments to be pitted and moments where it can be shiny and reflective to draw attention.
John, Councillor Wilson has a
Could you go back one
Certainly.
flick? How do people access the council chamber? Do they come in the front door and where's the actual...
They come in the front door and they come up this staircase here, and there's a lift adjacent to it, and they so I'll just go back two. So off the ground floor, they come in through here, up this staircase, or in this lift here, and then they arrive up here and down and into the council chamber there. Very much so, yep. And that's one of the reasons for this form, is so that it's legible on the outside, but also that you can look down this route and see it as a destination. It will be, the wayfinding will be drawn by light, will be a way of getting people through the building. Sorry, back to it. And so the material palette is a combination of glass that views in and out, of a ceramic material, some timber, some moments of metal, of special, set against the character of the brick that exists on the site and in the area. And so when we go to an external elevation of Berrien Square, what we're working very carefully on here is the relationship of the heights of the building, which it's got 3 floors, ground, first and second, in relation to making sure that it's less than the top of the tower of the church and has a relationship to the ridge of the church. So what you can see here is the church complemented by the proposed extension, and then stepping up through this area to the building that runs across, and then it reads as one large building, but also there's also legibility of a civic portion on access to the clock tower, and a library portion with the area of the civic council, the chambers in between. So we've got some external
Councillor Wilson has another question.
Certainly.
You've definitely taken account of no neutral rubber flat roof, just
Very much so.
drains
Yep.
away.
Yeah.
Especially for me.
It's very much so. Yep. So what you can actually see in this area here is this line is the next.
Sorry, Lane. Lane
that's
Brum has a
fine.
question.
Just a question, but it was just one before. I just realised I saw something what I didn't. One further back, the courtyard. Looking at the courtyard from here, it could be my eyesight, or is it the sloping courtyard
What you're seeing
towards the green wall? Is that
most of it is flat, except from the green wall where it's sloped as a ramp, so that we can get people from the lower portion to the upper portion.
okay? Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, but the vast majority of it is flat. And so some external views. So this is coming across Berrien Square. So what you're seeing here is the War Memorial in the foreground, and on axis is the main entrance into the space, the church to our left, and the extension, and these large timber fins that are providing the solar shading along the length of the building into the work bar at the top floor, and then the foreground is this idea of a civic space that connects into the building, and then the legibility of the council chamber through here, and this large window here that's oriented to the clock tower.
Councillor Lynette Lovett.
I was just looking at the big long glass window there on the council chamber, and we're talking about our Mary House tree here with our tree, is it the Henny Parker tree? Whether that may be able to be etched down that as a feature on the front of this, because it would actually look quite good from the outside looking at that, and then from the council chamber side of it, it could look quite effective with the natural lights and things. It's just a thought. I just wondered whether we could incorporate that on that particular window if it was viable.
Councillor Brown?
Just another question looking at this. In between the church extension, the new one, and the new building, is a small alleyway. Is that correct? Is
It
that
is.
to be used as an alleyway to walk, or is it to be
No,
closed off?
it will be closed, so there'll be a gate along that,
Okay.
so people won't be aware of it. But what it's doing is it's providing fire egress from the building down that area. And if you look closely at some of the plans, you'll see there's a sort of a staff back door access from the car park down there. So the next view is from from the Berrien Square, looking across to the sort of looking south. So we're sort of standing north, looking south. So again, the church is in the foreground, and the extension, and then the building beyond. And the articulation that's occurring here is what Trevor talked about in relation to the second floor, so that we are working with this stepping up of the building and pulling back, so that we can give the church some space. And then what you're seeing is the entrance to the library beyond, and again this access onto the memorial. And we've removed some foliage in this view just to understand the full extent of that, but there would be some planting in the foreground of this bit of Berrien Square. And then from the other angle, looking down Havelock Street, and what you're seeing here is the cafe espresso bar spilling out onto Berrien Square, entrance off Havelock Street, and then working our way down Pioneer Hall as part of that streetscape, and then the children's library with large punched windows in a solid form. Sorry, Councillor, I keep on hitting you in the eye with a laser. Apologies. Trying to stop you flying your plane. And then up on the upper level, looking out is the non-fiction part of the library, wrapping through to the front face over here, and then beyond that is 255. And what you can see just in the very corner is a suggestion of where the school bus would come when the school visits come. The children would disgorge from the bus, and we imagine coming in through the original door of Pioneer Hall into the children's area. So there's and looking to activate the street down Havelock Street. I'll go on.
Councillor Brown?
I've got another question. Coming back to the level change. So we've got the level change in the courtyard,
Yes.
because there's up close to a meter fall, isn't it, on the full side? Do we get a sloping floor inside, or is it a stepping down side in the building itself, or how do you pick that up?
What I could do is, if you just bear with me, I'll just whip back through the plans. It's the easiest way to explain. Broadly, sorry, there. You're over the site. There's a number of falls. So basically, there's a metre fall from about here to about the front door, and there's a further 700 to 800 millimetre fall down to this corner. So we've got a one level here, which is all on the same level, that folds out into the courtyard, and there's steps through here and a ramp that ramps down from this level to here. So we're dropping about 400, 500 millimetres, and then we're from this landing, the level, we then ramp back down to the children's area here, which means that the existing Pioneer Hall is at level threshold here. The plans that we're showing here is a stepped entry off Havelock Street, but we're in the process of working through, so that will be accessible, and that will have a ramped access through there. So broadly, there's 3 levels to the building: this level, that level, and this level. Those 3 levels, and then once we go up, it's the first floor is all on one level, and level 2 is all on one level.
Councillor Wilson, did you have a question?
Mine was the same question.
Oh.
I knew the site fell.
And then this is, here we go. This is the view that explains the courtyard. So this is looking from the face of the EOC back to the building. So what you're looking at here is the main building through here, and this is the upper workplace level 2, and into a big double height space, which is the performance space in the building. This is a space where the kids' music activities will go on. It's got provision for film screenings or projections. and we're suggesting here that there's an ability for the doors on one side to open up so it can all spill out into the courtyard. And then what you're seeing here is the level courtyard, and then this bit here is where it ramps down. So there's steps off this edge down to the lower area through here, which is at level with the children, so the children's activities can spill out into this lower area here. And then we're suggesting a landscape planting in the middle that can be deciduous and track and change with the weather through the year.
Councillor McMillan, then Mawson.
Thank you. So is that a glass wall between the performance area and the outside?
It is, yep.
So that won't affect if you do put a screen up and are showing movies, or how will that work?
It will need to have an ability to black out, or but also there's a question around the level of projection in terms of like a space like this, which has got daylight, but you can still see it.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
What you're seeing in this image at the moment is in the morning, so it's direct sunlight is going in the morning. In the afternoon, the sun's round on the other side, so you won't get direct sunlight into the space in the afternoon.
Are those shutters along the top, are they concrete or are they movable or are they permanent?
They're fixed solar shading, and as we go through the later design stages, we'll determine exactly what those are. But that is to reduce the solar gain into the building, in particular into the workspace. Probably not. But we'll study the need for that to happen or not. Shall I keep on going? Yep. And then this is from the inside of the performance space. So what you're seeing here is looking out into the courtyard, so the landscape in the foreground and that planted wall that we talked about. So that would be a green space to look out to, but also catch the afternoon sun washing across it, the tree. And then what you're seeing is the bleacher seating. So this is so this can gather small groups up to about 50 or 60 people in this format. And then when there's a performance with more people, we can put chairs out into the foreground here for smaller, bigger events. And then there's a balcony area up here, which is where we anticipate the young adults will be, a section, not just young adults, but the young adults collection section, that look out into the space. And then this is a staircase that goes up and connects to level 1. And this is a feature we've used in other libraries to great effect.
This is probably a good slide here to demonstrate as well one of the major features of the design of this building, which is the integration of the timber.
Sorry, there's a bit of a hum when they're both on. Could we just turn Trevor's microphone off, and Sean, let's have a go with just you.
Is that better? I'll let Trevor and John talk through it in more detail. But one of the when we started this project, one of the big drivers that came from the initial council workshops that we had was a strong focus around sustainability. And it wasn't to get too carried away with it and spend money on features for the sake of spending money on features. There was a good principle that was developed at the start, which was around using what is an industry recognised tool called Green Star, using that as a tool and a guide for design decisions as we go through the project. So from a sustainability feature perspective, there's a whole raft of best practice processes which we're going through, which we'll go into even more detail later. But one of the key elements which we've adopted on the building is a timber structure, as you can see there, and these diagrams sort of indicate the look and feel of what that means. We know that the timber structure has got a premium in cost to the tune of $1.5 million for utilising timber. But we've put it forward in recommending that we adopt that on this building due to the benefits that it does have, from a general sustainability context. From a commercial payback perspective, to be honest, it's difficult to demonstrate the clear commercial payback of it. However, from a earthquake resilience, from a low damage design philosophy, from a early occupation after larger events from a council's operation perspective, it ticks all of those boxes. And also, from a sustainability and renewable source perspective, it also ticks those boxes, which is one of the reasons why we've put that forward, and we'll be asking council later today to allow us to progress the design on that basis. But maybe I'll pass over to you guys to flick through some of this.
Yeah, so I guess the slide is that certainly the timber structure will have a quite strong impact on, I guess, the internal architecture, and also we do want to have that external expression as well around the timber aspect, but it will be paired with other materials as well. So Sean sort of alluded to the sustainable aspect, but it's also, we're looking at low damage design, so looking at using some recent sort of technology that's developed over the last sort of 10 years. So it's a combination of timber and steel. In our case, we're using this rocking shear walls, timber shear walls with tension cables through the middle. And effectively, it's like that toy. It self-rights after an earthquake, so it will move, but also it will self-centre back. It's integrated with some steel dissipators, which actually absorb the energy in major earthquake events. So instead of, it actually protects the main structure, and you can unbolt sort of the steel elements and replace them rather than having to replace beams and columns and the like. So the big thing with seismic design and low damage design is actually the weight of timber buildings is a lot less, and that helps with the whole reducing the sort of forces as well. So it's got, ticks quite a few boxes, and even architecturally, look and feel, it's a softer look at the building as well, which we'll be sort of working through. Another big aspect of this project is the sustainability aspect beyond just the timber. The biggest ticket item around sustainability is energy efficiency. So we are looking at utilising a artesian chiller system, so using the water from a bore for your transfer of heat. Slightly more capital costs, but it's got a extremely sort of short payback from an operational perspective in the order of sort of 2 to 5 years. So technology is not new. It's been used in the ECAN building, Turanga, Central Christchurch Library, the Arts Centre in Christchurch, and at the Christchurch International Airport. So it tends to be used where there's the owner-operator of buildings, so that they'll, after sort of that, the operational sort of benefits. So, so we're using water for that transfer. There's two sort of systems of environmental control within the building. There's a separate one for the libraries and the chambers to the office space. So in the office space, we're using chilled beams, which is using that artesian water chillers for both the heating and cooling in the building. So again, it's a slightly more capital cost, but there's actually a major benefit on both the operational cost, but also important on the internal environment. So tends to be buildings more comfortable for the users. You have less drafts and stuff than having a lot of, I guess, air conditioning ducts sort of blowing hot and cold air. So it's been used on buildings like ECAN recently in Christchurch. So it's using some of the best sort of, low operational sort of cost benefits, and that's where you're getting your best payback for sustainability. Of course.
Okay, I'm just going to jump in here with a question. So in regards to the increase in capital costs, roughly how much more are we talking, and when is the payback period, and what is the OPEX savings per annum after payback?
The premium and capital cost for the artesian bores plus the associated plant room and the chilled beam system, which is all integrated, is just over 1 million, 1.05 million. The estimated payback on that period is between 2 to 5 years. From all accounts, the engineers are telling me it's 2, but I'd like to say between 2 to 5 until we do sort of a bit more work in and around it. It doesn't come without its risks. We do still need to go through a resource consent process to test whether we can actually physically put some bores down. What's involved is drilling essentially 4 bores. 2 of those bores water takes, so we need to go down to aquifers between 90 to 120 metres, and then 2 of those bores will be re-injection bores, which re-inject back at around about 30 to 40 metres. So the reason we put 2 in is the system relies on 1 to operate, but in the event that 1 fails or we need to do maintenance maintenance on one or whatever. It just gives us that resilience that we have got that spare backup one there should it be required.
Thank you. And the one question I didn't hear answered was just in regards to the ongoing savings in OPEX after payback. Do you have any indication what that is?
Look, sorry, I don't have that detail to hand, but we can find that out and we will present that back around the energy consumption and what that relates to in the building. But all we've been advised at this stage from the engineers that it will pay itself back within sort of 2 to 5 years, and then at which point, obviously, the benefit from those energy savings will be ongoing for the life of the system, which will be far less than typical BRF or standardised air conditioning systems.
Excellent, thank you. And a question from Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. This is looking really good. But my question is, this extra $1 million here, is that $1 million on the budget, or are we sticking to our original budget that we had, and this is going to fall within that?
So part of the $51.6 million, which was the approved budget for the project, there was an allocation of $3 million for enhanced sustainability features. So I mentioned earlier around the best practice goals. So the best practice features are included within the standard baseline build scenario. Where we've identified the extra overall or the enhancement sustainability features, the things like the timber frame, the chilled beam artesian well system, and there'll be a few others which we'll touch on. Those are over and above what is best practice or industry standard. It takes us to that next level. So we are recommending that this solution here for just over $1 million forms part of that $3 million sustainability budget, which is included within the 51.6.
Councillor Brahm.
Thank you. It might be a simple answer for you, but I'm a wee bit lost here. We're going to pump up water, what is about 14 degrees, would it be? How do you get it to 20 without any other source of heat? Is it electricity, or what are we going to use from there on?
So you've probably all heard of what is called a ground source heat pump, or some of you may have heard what that is. So basically, this is exactly the same as one of those, but on a much larger scale. So where the benefits of a ground source water supply or ground source heat pump is you're taking what is a relatively constant temperature material from the ground, and it's relatively stable all year round. So instead of using the energy required to heat something from -1, -2 up to 22 degrees or whatever it may be, and vice versa from sort of 4 degrees or 30 degrees back down, you're taking a much smaller temperature band. So you're taking something that's from a constant 15 degrees and lifting that up to 21 plus or minus 2, and vice versa. So you're still using an electrical element, but the electrical element is doing much less work than what it would typically be doing, hence the reason that's where the financial saving comes from.
Councillor Wilson.
How much water are you going to need to run it from the well? And we are in a red zone, so I mean it's not domestic, it's not drinking water, so are we quite confident we would get a consent?
It doesn't use any water. Whatever water they draw up, at the same amount of water goes back down. So they just use it as an energy transfer source.
So as part of this process, our engineers have done a desktop survey of the aquifers, which is what we need to do to determine whether the system will work. So there's been a desktop review done, and the outcome of that desktop review is positive, and we believe that it will be achievable in this location. However, there is still further work to be done in refining that, which will involve putting a test bore down just to confirm those water capacities which are in these assumptions, and that we need to do that as well for testing the case and proving the case for a resource consent from Environment Canterbury. So there's a bit of water to go under the bridge, excuse the pun, but we're confident that we can make it work, and it's a system that is a low energy system, and it's supported by a lot of people, so it's not something that's going to have adverse effect on the local aquifers.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you. In the early days of our submissions, we had a member of the public, Brian Cameron, came to us and suggested that a wooden frame, low impact building, what a good idea it would be. It seems ironic that same person was one of the forefathers in spray irrigation and deep wells in our district. So yeah, good on him. My question is, though, IL4 we're going for one building, IL3 for the main building. Is there an IL5? And what would be the cost difference if we went to that IL5?
Yeah, there's IL5, that tends to be like the Justice Precinct in hospitals, so it's the highest level, but Emergency Operations Centre IL4 is still a really big threshold, and so every Emergency Operations Centre for councils tend to be built to IL4, but IL4 is IL5 is another step up.
Well, I'm not a structural engineer and I don't know all the technical detail, but for those that may not understand what the difference between IL3, IL2, IL5 and others are, basically it's just it's a calculation that's used by the structural engineers for testing the performance of the frame, the structural frame, the performance of the building under different scale seismic events. So a larger earthquake, which has a return period of 1 in 500 years or 1,000 years, whatever it is, depending on that threshold they assess that at, that's what determines how they calculate it out to. Why are we using IL4 in this building? Typically, if we're building an office building, it would be IL2/IL3 based design. The reason we're using IL4 in part of the building, which is for the Emergency Operations Centre, is to ensure that that has got a post-disaster function or use in the event that there is a seismic event. From a civil defence perspective, there's a control point there for controlling the district. So why IL4 relates primarily to structure, there's also another element from building services resilience, i.e. making sure that we've got water storage, solutions for waste, power resilience and everything else like that that's built into that scenario as well. So that's what we've designed in for the EOC facility.
Thank you.
So I guess the timber and the artesian chillers are the big ticket items, but there's also other sustainable aspects like rainwater harvesting we're looking to capture, and also sort of cabling for photovoltaic panels on the roof, which we'll look into a bit further as well. But Sean alluded to, there's a whole lot of stuff that's kind of business as usual for good quality buildings. Going above code insulation has a huge benefit for a low capital costs. Lighting controls, obviously LED lighting, low flow water features, fittings and stuff like that. So there's a whole list of aspects of the building we are trying to will be integrating within this building. So I guess just finishing on, we sort of started to look through the sort of look and feel internally as well within the buildings, and obviously just like the external aspect of the buildings, internally we want to draw on sort of aspects of the district. So this is not necessarily alluding to the different levels, but pulling out those connections to place really, both I guess history and agriculture and with nature, and obviously the rivers as well. So as far as colours, textures and sort of pattern making, we're looking at integrating that within the design. So some of the thoughts on even on the main workplace floor is obviously quite a strong graphic of the Canterbury Plains, but also you do have those shelter belts and roads crossing against the grain of the grid. So actually that's where some of those, I guess the diagonal happens from our sort of furniture and layout, so we can get a interesting sort of pattern making within that connection. So, and also trying to get some texture into the floor finishes. So that's something we'll sort of be exploring. A sketch of the main sort of workplace spa. So we have got a large sort of open space, trying to get a lot of natural light into the space, but also some quality sort of solar shading. So hence the articulation on the outside of the solar shading fins. Obviously, we've got timber sort of joists on the ceiling, so that actually has quite a strong impact on the space, but we are trying to overlay that with colour and texture and other materials which will bring a bit of life to the space. And again in the library, sort of the concept of using the shelves, picking up the sort of the braided rivers and how the shelves actually forming spaces within the library. So again, that's a connection to place which sort of been working through. And I think the last slide here is just that children's area and sort of connection with the Pioneer Hall, having a larger opening on the eastern side, connecting to the kids' space. And also you can see there's a connection in the background into the courtyard.
Councillor Brown?
No. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Looking really good. Pleased with what you've got there so far. Thinking about the timber, you're chopping down a forest in the Amazon, or is it local timber? What sort?
No, so it's all the structural timber is radiated pine, so it's all sustainably sourced and it's obviously out of Nelson or is a source of it, but it's all just radiated pine sort of structural timber. So,
and looking at the flooring, you've got the getting it to amalgamate in with the look of the Canterbury Plains. No doubt it'll be made out of wool.
Get back to you on that one.
I'm assuming it would be.
The answer to that sheet apparently, yes. So we have this conversation quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah. And just one other thing, it's on the shading on the southwest corner, the fins. You might want to flick to the actual slide. It probably just needs some, that one. Those three is it four? Three. It just doesn't look quite right, but you might be able to do some work on that to have a look at some other options for there.
Yep.
But for me, it's not there, but let's see what the people think.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah. With wood, you obviously haven't got the span you have with steel or concrete. What sort of distance have we got? I know you've got, I can see in a picture in the library, you've got wall uprights. I mean, this room, would it have one in the middle or would it be able to reach this size?
Yeah, so timber has slightly less spans, so the grid line's still pretty good. It's sort of 8.2 metres in one direction and 6.6 in the other. So two bays of the building are the same size as this room. So the fins are around sort of 2 to 3 metres long, but they're not in every sort of grid line as well. They're sort of spaced out like 60 metres apart. So a key part of going to timber was still ensuring that both the library and the workspace was going to maintain an open feel. And I guess that's where it comes back to that last shot of the office space. We're not even showing the whole floor there, and it's still quite a large open space. And we looked at the placement of any walls and those fins being encapsulated in like small meeting rooms. So where we've got open space, we're not actually building more rooms necessarily around that to maintain that openness. So we think the balance is sort of sitting quite nicely at the present time.
Councillor Lovett?
Just looking back at that southeast corner where the cafe's sitting, what protection are you supplying there? Because it is a really cold corner. Are you intending to put some glass out there for the people sitting outside, or is it just going to be weather dependent whether they sit out there or not? Because I mean, the cold winds do come round there.
I guess it's partially, we've got some coverage there, but partially that might happen what happens in the Bearing Square design, which is sort of obviously just conceptual at the moment, where there's some localised sort of planting around that area as opposed to glazed screens. So we're not currently looking at enclosing that corner too much. So it may be partially that you go up there when it's sunny and sheltered, or it may be some low hedges or something defining that corner. So it's probably detailed to work through.
Councillor Reveley? And I've just turned your light off.
Right, thank you. We're looking at the outside of the building, but the inside of the building, there's some fancy shelving, there's all sorts of things to go in there. Can we be assured that that 51.6 million covers everything? Walk in to start work the day that they walk in?
Yes. The $51.6 million budget includes various components. So obviously part of that's the construction cost. There's also professional fees, design fees associated with that. There's allowances in there for all the loose furniture, fittings and equipment. And there's also a global ICT and audio-visual budget within that 51.6.
Thank you, and I'm pleased to hear there's IT budget in there with our lovely microphone system we have here. But can I say that really impressed with where you guys have got to, having been on the project control group right back from where all this started. We have moved a long way here, and it is starting to actually feel like it's happening. Interesting to see the stainless steel over the entranceway as I drove past the old building last night to see how it was going, to still see the stainless steel over the front of the entranceway there. And it's funny how the more things change, the more they stay the same. But yes, I'm really excited by where we've got to, and I think we're just taking some giant leap forward now. So it's great. So thank you.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. And Councillor Ellis has just said some of the things I wanted to say. I wasn't in the workshop yesterday, and I congratulate you on where we've landed, because I can see the changes from our earlier designs. But just my question was around the benefits of having timber in those big workspaces. That will have a kind of a quietening effect too. It'll take the echo sounds out of a workspace, as opposed to concrete and tilt slabs.
I think acoustics is pretty important. We have acoustic engineers as part of our team, and in between the ribs of the timber we're looking at inlaying acoustic material, so that will be considered. I mean, I guess timber is a softer looking timber. It's a little bit look and feel to the space, so still, as I say, acoustically, you know, it's probably similar to other finishes, but certainly the whole impression will be quite a soft interior, and acoustics is pretty important when you get into open plan sort of or activity-based workplace type sort of environments.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, my question is to us as well as the architects. Are we locking this design in, sort of, if it goes out to the public, we're going to get a flood of people saying, why are you putting it there or why are you putting it there? Are we...
Councillor Wilson, actually I have the answer on that. Yesterday, as Councillor Rawlinson has alluded to, we did have a presentation just to give us a heads up, and the Chief Executive and his staff have kindly prepared some recommendations, which I'll be reading through at the end of the meeting, if that helps. Councillor Lovett.
I was actually going to say, I mean, I'm quite excited by this, and I'm actually really pleased that you've taken on the pillars on the front. It sort of is a little bit of relation to the building we've just pulled down, and people loved that frontage of the pillars, and it's actually nice to see that you've got a bit of this in there, and it's broken up. You know, I think it's great.
Councillor Urquhart.
Yeah, great presentation. Next to the Pioneer Hall, you said there was the children's area. In the ceiling, there was acoustic dampening, so that means kids playing around there will deaden the noise for the rest of it, if that's the case.
Yeah, so again, the acoustic engineer just looks at all the spaces and comes up with the recommendations. So we work with those guys on a number of projects. So they look at the function of each spaces and recommend where their acoustic treatment needs to go. And so we'll be working closely with them throughout as the design evolves.
Councillors, are there any further comments or questions? Then I'm happy to go into the recommendations. Oh, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. My question is, thank you for your presentation. It's very exciting. Anyway, my question is about privacy. I can see that the offices and the workspace for the staff is designed as open space. What about the privacy? And also the second question is energy efficiency, and how can you keep the heating, you know, efficient if it's all open space, open plan?
So the first one was about privacy. I guess in the nature of the workspace, we're working closely with the staff, and also in other sort of experience in other office buildings. So we have a number of different collaboration types. So there's meeting rooms, there's quiet rooms, there's even collaborative spaces with higher acoustic screens around it. So, and also looking at, you know, potentially using the storage units to help divide the space up as well. So we get down to that finer grain detail as we work through. As far as heating, I guess our mechanical guys look holistically at the whole space, so they take in consideration the thermal envelope of the space, and then they design the system in association with that. So we've got glass and the thermal efficiency of the roof and the walls. that's what they take into consideration. So they don't just look at, you know, being a system, and they look at the whole thing.
Yeah, just on the constant temperature as well. That's one of the major benefits around that chilled beam system. It's got a much more stable temperature band, and you know it's great for open spaces for getting that constant temperature. You can liken it from a heat output, similar to a sort of a radiator type system where you've got central heating in a space, by radiators. That space is generally a relatively constant temperature, as opposed to air conditioning where you might be sitting under it on that desk and you've got cold air blowing over the top of you, which hasn't got as good a temperature performance. So that's one of the benefits we're looking at with the system as well.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks. Just think about the glass. There's a lot of glass in the building which lets light in, which is great for natural light. That's what you need. But energy goes in and out. Do you use double glazing, triple glazing, or what do you use there?
Well, it's a minimum of double glazing, but there's also a whole lot of different types of specialist glass as far as coatings and that. So that's what we do. I guess between architect and the mechanical engineers, we go through a whole different lots of scenarios about which is the most appropriate. And it may be that we do take a little bit of glass off once we get into that final bit of detail. But we have got a number of solid walls as well as glass. It's all about that balance and also blinds and shading devices and all that. So we look at the whole thing holistically as the project progresses.
Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to, just looking at all the glass frontages and that, and I was just envisioning whereabouts are we going to put the name of the building? Because I guess the building will have to have a name on it somewhere, or the crest amongst our planning. I thought, where's that going to sit?
Good question.
Has anyone thought about it?
On those timber fins, we'll have to keep them there.
Or yes, on our silo.
Yeah, that's a good question. How long's the name of the building?
We don't know, but you need it somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So.
Yeah.
Excellent, and that's exactly why we have lots of brains sitting around the table having the conversation. Councillors, Philippa has kindly sent you all the recommendation on your devices that the Chief Executive has prepared, and I understand that the media, if you have your devices on, you should also have a copy. Unfortunately, we can't put it up on screen at the moment, but I will read through the recommendation. That Council approves the general concept for the Library and Civic Centre building in line with the presentation by the design team on the 15th of August, progresses a timber building design solution in general accordance with the presented concept, proceeds with progressing an artesian well and chilled beam cooling system within the new building, further considers sustainability features to be identified during future stages of the design program, and instructs the design team to progress further design developments in general accordance with the concept design presented. And I am happy to move that recommendation. Councillor Brown.
Maybe a second, but just perhaps one word or two to go in number 3 for proceeds with progressing artesian well and chilled beam cooling system. It'll also be for heating, heating system. Yeah.
Cooling and heating system.
Cooling/heating.
Okay.
Happy to second that.
Okay, so the matter is now open for debate. Councillor Ellis.
No debate really, Madam Mayor, just support the recommendation, and as I say, I think we're well and truly moving forward in the right direction, and just pleased to see that the public had a huge input on how this building is actually taking shape, so it's great.
Absolutely support that. And can I also add that right at the start when we were talking about what the building was to look like, we talked about giving the community something to be proud of. If we want to have civic pride, we need something that they are proud of, and also most proud of the sustainability features and the fact that we are walking the talk, that we are going to lead by example. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, it's a great milestone today, because today is a giant leap forward in the progression of this building. We've been waiting a long time for it to get to here, and we're now well on the way. So thank you all for the work you've done so far. It's really good, and I'm sure the community is going to be inspired by this building, the way you've come up with it there. I'm sure of it.
So I will put the recommendation. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Keep up the great work. Thank you. There was one request, Sean, next time you're asked about the money, if you could say it a little louder, we'd feel a little more confident, I think was the phrase. Tick, tick.
There's no harm,
Okay,
is there?
councillors, this now leads us to, oh, not quite. We'll just take a moment to say goodbye to our guests. Councillors, so the item we are now addressing on the agenda is item 5.5, the notice of motion for the East Street water feature. And we have a report that has been prepared by the Chief Executive. Mr Chief Executive, it has been read by councillors, but is there anything you wish to add?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no. I'm just happy to respond to any questions, if any.
Okay, so councillors, do you have any questions of the Chief Executive? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I have a question. Just wondering how to put this. When I made the decision, when I voted to move the water feature to the domain, I did that thinking that we'd have sort of the best of both worlds. It would make way for a nice new CBD redevelopment, and we'd have it in the domain. Just wondering, we probably shot ourselves in the foot because the public haven't seen what the CBD redevelopment is going to look like. So will those plans be shown to the community, and is that going to affect this? That's kind of my question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, what we did in the following the last council discussion, we set up a screen, an electronic screen in the former eyesight building, and have been displaying the draft CBD redevelopment plans for some weeks in that position, and that was with the purpose of better informing the community of the overall CBD redevelopment plans. Of course, what we haven't wanted to do is presuppose the outcome from this council meeting. So what we were very careful to do is just simply show those CBD plans as they were at that point in time, without trying to lead the community in one way or another, as opposed to explaining a decision that council was still ultimately in the process of making via the revocation. So we have attempted to put some more information out there, but haven't tried to defend it.
Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask, have we had any feedback from those plans being put out there? I have seen them on the building. You know, we've had all the feedback from social media damning us for what we did, but have we seen any comments either way from having that up there for the public to see?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not aware of a strong reaction to the plans. We've had the odd anecdotal comment that having seen those plans, they perhaps understand the vision for the CBD redevelopment a little better, but it hasn't resulted in an avalanche of comment changing the original reaction to the decision, no.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm in the same position as listeners on the other side. I voted with my heart and with my knowledge of reading plans and how things can be done. I also signed the revoking of that motion due to the hassle what we got. So, as I see, we can bring it back, not now, but later. The same as what happened with the stopping when we started the build. That was basically revoked too.
So is that a question for the Chief Executive?
So as I understand, if we say we're not going to change it, it's that we revoke the motion, the fountain stays where it is. Is that correct?
Well, in the meantime, that would be
Yes.
correct, through you, Madam Mayor. The revocation of the motion would essentially mean the previous decision doesn't stand.
Correct.
So the previous decision was to remove it to a site as yet to be determined in the domain. If that is overturned, then there is no decision to move it from its current site.
Correct. But if we find, or the people of this district start seeing the plans and seeing what's happening, if we decide 6 months from now to have another look at where it could be, not in the domain, I've got other ideas where it could be, but it's personal. But I'm quite happy to promote some of the options. What could be nicer for the water feature, or well, it's not the water feature, it's more than that. I could see it in front of the new building. I can see it almost in the courtyard or whatever. But I mean, there might be a better place for it. So if we decide in 6 months from now to bring another proposal forward, so we can do the whole centre of town the right way and use this as a feature in the centre of town. Is it an option?
Yes, technically, through you, Madam Mayor, that would be an option. Remembering that the reason that we were seeking clarification was the redevelopment of the CBD.
Mm-hmm.
And so the complication of further consideration somewhere in the future will be the difficulty that our design team will have around the CBD redevelopment, because it leaves significant doubt as whether they should be designing the redevelopment with the water feature in or out. And that was, of course, the very reason that we were seeking Council's direction in the first place. So technically, yes,
yeah.
But it does pose some practical problems.
I know that, but it's once in 50 years that you make a big decision like this. If we decide that it's, or if the town decides it's not in the right place, it would be the time now, or in the next 2 years, to make the decision. I know it's going to be causing some problem, but I mean, that part of the whole streetscape is one of the last ones that's getting done, so it won't be done in the first year, in the 2 years.
Is that correct, Mr. Chief Executive?
Is it? And I make a question out of
it. Yes, but I think through you, Madam Mayor, the implications for the design are now. So yes, you might be able to develop that corner last, but what are you designing around it and leading up to it in the meantime, not knowing what its future is? So yes, but again, there are some practical implications of ongoing uncertainty.
Thank you.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. My question is similar to Councillor Brahms, and if we did revoke the decision today, does that close the door before we've explored other options? Because I think we're in a position now with the whole CBD. We've seen an amazing presentation today on what the Barring Square end of our town is going to look like, and I strongly believe we have to look forward, not back. So my question, as I said, was if we revoke it, are we stopping it completely? Or I would like to see us put ourselves in a position where we can further explore other options around this. Whether we continue the CBD and leave that piece until the end till we decide. But my question is, can we not prevent us looking further forward?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the revocation simply takes the previous decision off the books. That leaves council with no decision on the future location of the water feature.
So my question...
That then leaves the design team with no clarity. Perhaps an implication that it stays where it is because there's no decision to move it. But it leaves the design team having to start work to design the CBD redevelopment project around the water feature being there because there is no other decision of council.
So my next question, if I may, is then can we then implement something else to look forward, whether it's in the domain consultation, that we have a question in there, would people like to see it relocated to the domain or a better option? But I just am conscious we must look forward, not back. And maybe we need to take a rain check just on the water fountain part of it so that we look further at other options. I think there are other options out there too that may not be in the domain, but I think we have to look forward. We're not, and this is for the people of the future for the next 30, 50 years. It's not for us today, it's looking forward. And also we must not let the media drive what was a very negative outcome in the media, although the numbers are not great when you look at the bigger population, but it created a very negative feeling in the community about what we were trying to achieve, which was something very positive.
Just if I can answer the question in there, I think the last decision of council's, which was to remove the water feature from East Street and put it at a site yet to be determined in the domain, that was the resolution that caused the community reaction. And I think you could justifiably regard that as having already consulted on moving it to the domain, to me. That was the impact of that decision, and the community gave you their perspective reasonably clearly. So yes, you could ask them again whether you wanted it in the domain, but that would feel, to me, significantly like where we've been in the last 6 weeks. But yes, you could. The revocation simply takes the resolution off the books.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In connection with the options, looking at different options, moving forward and all those sort of things, does that mean we are delaying the project? If we are doing that, will that cost more money? And what would be the ramification with that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the inevitable answer to that is yes, there will be delays, and yes, there will be additional costs. We've got the project at a point where we needed clarification of the water feature in order to progress. So if that clarity is not there, then there has to be delays. And every project you can imagine of this nature, the greater the delays, the greater the cost. So the short answer would be yes, that there has to be delays and cost implications.
Okay, Mr. Chief Executive, I have a couple of questions myself. So one is, I read in the media that there had been an online petition. I'm wondering if you could just help me understand. I hear that there have been 1,452 signatures on that online petition, and yet I have not seen that come to this table.
Through you, Madam, yes, I understand that is the position as well. It has not come to this table because the form of the expression of that petition has not been in a form where it can readily be brought to you. So we've been advised there is a petition by electronic email and the number of people, but it isn't in the form that would readily recognise it as a petition that you would expect to see at a council table. We are not, by saying that, we are not in any way implying that the sentiments it expresses nor the number of signatories is not valid, but it simply hasn't come to us in a form that is easily distributed to you as a recognisable petition.
And also in the media, in the time shortly after our last discussion, I read some narrative that the fountain cannot be moved, which is contrary to the advice that we've received from staff. And I'm wondering if you could just confirm for me how it was decided that it could be moved and why we're getting mixed messages through the public media.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we believe it can be moved physically. Why the media has reported other comments, I simply don't know.
Councillor Malcolm.
Mr. Chief Executive, you say that it will come at extreme costs, right? Any delay. I see it as savings, right? The delay. That we don't go ahead and spend money to shift something. I also believe, I've been involved in the concrete industry, and it will fall to pieces, right? It will take a lot to resurrect that fountain. So I see, by leaving it there, as the public at the moment requesting, as a savings to our community, right? So the question is, do you agree? That's right. That'll do. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't recall using the word extreme cost implications. I simply agreed or answered the question that were there cost implications, which I still believe there would be. And secondly, yes, if the water feature stays where it is, then there's clearly no cost implications because it just carries on its existence. The answer to the question that I was answering was in relation to delays of certainty causing the CB redevelopment project to be delayed, and were there cost implications of that delay to the redevelopment project, in which case my answer stands, I believe there is.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To get the thing on the road, so to speak, I'll move the first recommendation that the report and notice of motion be received.
And I'm actually happy to second that. We are a council who will listen, and I'm very proud of the fact, as we saw in the previous presentation, that when people have come and told us their thoughts, we have listened. The matter is now open for debate. Councillor Lovett.
Do we have to second that? What's that done? Okay. And I will support this after speaking to many people at a lot of meetings I have been to. We've had some pretty frank discussions over this fountain and why it was put there initially. And one person said to me, we've turned our back on the river, it's all treed, and while this fountain is in the middle of our CDB, it brings us closer together what this town was there for. It was a river crossing, and it's peace and tranquility in a stressful, busy street. It's nice to sit there and reflect around this fountain. So I will support this, leaving it there. So, yeah, and I support it. Yeah, I know we're up that part.
That's okay, you're just a little premature. That's okay.
I'm
So at the moment, the report and notice of motion is to be received. I'll put that. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? Carried. So the revocation of council motion, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'll move that the council's decision of 27 June 19 to relocate the East Street water feature to the Ashburton domain be revoked. And in doing that, there was no consultation on this. We put it out there that it's just going to be moved to the domain. We should have had consultation on it. We heard from the people out there that they like it where it is, the 1500. There's still a lot of people out there silent on it who didn't sign a petition or push the button to do a petition. But there's more than that out there that want to leave it where it is. There's a lot of history in it, in that feature. It combines the three rivers. It is the Ashburton District. There was no firm costings for moving it. We had an estimate. There was nothing firm. Can it be moved? Of course it can be moved. Anything can be moved. Can it be done cost effectively? I don't know. Just talked about, one of the councillors talked before about putting something there for the next 50 years when you're developing something. Well, this one's only been there for 25 and we want to rip it out. it's there for a minimum of 50 years. We're looking 50-year cycles. So we leave it where it is.
Councillor Brown?
I will second the motion, not for the same reasons. Firstly, the first part of Councillor Brown's spiel I agree with, because that's the reason I'm signed this petition as well. I did it before because we didn't do it the right way. The people found out after we did it, no communication, nothing at all. That is the part I regret. My decision to shift it, my head and my heart still say yes. But I will follow this recommendation and this motion.
Chief Executive, I have a question in regards to the consultation. So the revocation of motion states that the reason for revoking is that there has been no public consultation or input from the community on the proposal to relocate the East Street water feature. I'm wondering if you could just remind us what consultation has been had and why perhaps we didn't consult.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the Council has consulted on the CBD redevelopment. They have consulted in a general sense about the vision for a new CBD, and the feedback from the community was in and around pedestrian and cycle friendly, safe, as opposed to running the gauntlet of East Street. So that has been the theme and the vision, if you like, from the CBD redevelopment that has informed the ongoing work of the CBD redevelopment working party and the design team that's been appointed. And it has also been, I guess, in the background or the guiding light to many other consultation conversations with various groups, including those most affected, which are the business owners in the area. So in one sense, there has been a consultation around the CBD redevelopment. However, it is true to say that the specific removal of one part of that CBD redevelopment, i.e. the water feature, has not been a question specifically asked of the community. And when Council made its decision, the community reacted, as we all know. So yes, we have consulted, we think, reasonably fulsomely in relation to the overall CBD redevelopment, but at no stage did we highlight the water feature and ask the community's specific opinion of that aspect of the redevelopment.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I will be supporting this motion. We haven't taken the people on the journey with us. If we'd have done that, we actually may have public support for moving this. But it seemed like something we just plucked out of the air and decided to do, and without a comprehensive report around it. I still would like to know that if we move this, this is a structure that has been there 25 years, exposed to water, sunlight. We know how brittle things get when they're like that. How well will it survive a move? We've had no report around that, not in detail. And this is a significant feature. We saw in our previous presentation the significance of the three rivers around our new building and how they want to work that into that building. So the three rivers aspect of this district is very, very important, and I would hate to see that feature in any way at all damaged in the move. So I would like to see more reporting, more information before I make a final decision. I'm not actually opposed to moving it from where it is, but saying it has to go to the domain, I think is a mistake at this stage. If we proved that it can be moved safely and inexpensively, I may then support a better location for it. But as it stands at the moment, it just seems that something we've pulled out of the air and thought, gee, we better put it somewhere, let's throw it in the domain because we have a big open space there. I don't think we've done the work that we need to do to make that decision.
So that actually prompts me to ask a question, Mr. Chief Executive. I'm not sure if it's for you or perhaps the members of the Town Centre Working Group, who, if I recall correctly, are Councillors Brown, Price and Councillor Ellis. Are you on it as well? And Councillor Rawlinson is the chair. So I'm unsure if my question is best for Councillor Rawlinson or you, Mr Chief Executive. So I'm hearing three very talented speakers who are all on that committee who are telling me that we haven't done adequate work. But what I reflect on is the fact that this item came straight to Council. It didn't come via the Environmental Services Committee, it came straight to Council. And could someone please help me understand why that was?
Perhaps I'm happy to have first crack at that. So the CBD redevelopment working group met, understood the implications for the design team of the CBD redevelopment on knowing whether the water feature should be there or not. So was contemplating the time delays that we've already touched on. At the end of that working group meeting, it asked staff to prepare a report to the next council meeting on the matter, and the working group itself was in favour of the removal of the water feature, but it knew it didn't have the authority to make that decision. That wasn't a unanimous position of the working group, but it was the majority. They asked staff to prepare a report, which we duly did the next day, which then made the agenda for the council meeting. So while the working group does indeed report through a committee to council, staff prepared a report for the next council meeting at the behest of that working group, on the understanding that that there needed to be some certainty for the design team of the CBD and to keep it on track for its time frame. And of course, we're conscious that in the meantime that the delay has been created anyway because of the reaction to the decision. But that was our motivation, to give effect to the urgency that the working group discussed and agreed was there.
Councillor Rawlinson.
And if I may just add a comment to that, and I think the other part of it is that the domain the CBD redevelopment, the presentation that we saw hadn't been seen publicly, and we hadn't at that point put any graphic designs out there for people to be able to view and form an opinion of what, or to see what our CBD may be, and it is quite exciting. So, I mean, I was the instigator of moving the motion, but I still do, I'd like to take a rain check on it. I think that we do need to consult, whether it be via the domain development plan, but somewhere we have to find a way, and I'm not sure of the right way, to consult with the public, because as Councillor Braham said, there are other options there. And as they were speaking today about our new building and spoke about the Three Rivers, I could see it sitting outside that building. So I think we had the lesson of taking a rain check. We were criticised early in our 3U this term of council for taking a rain check and stepping back and re-looking at the new project. And look where we've landed, in a marvellous place. And I think with this water feature, I think we need to take a rain check too. I've had people say to me, "You guys are right, put a bulldozer through it." And that's not just one person. I've had several people, 1,500 in a petition is only 1,500 of 35,000. And my recommendation from this is, I don't know whether we should revoke it. We need to take a rain check and re-explore and consult on the water feature.
So we have a mover in Councillor Brown and a seconder in Councillor Brown. Councillor Reveley, you'd like to speak?
Yeah. This water feature, it's been there for 25 years. We're talking about revitalising it. It's such a fantastic thing, bringing people into our town. We wouldn't be worrying about redeveloping it. It's already there. I'll agree with Councillor Rawlinson. I think that when we finish, probably will end up revoking this one. You want to put another motion forward that we actually do consult on where it goes, because I think I wasn't on that committee, but it come to that, so we weren't aware that the domain part wasn't in that. So I think another motion, once we revoke this one, that we do some consultation, because it's no good tangling ourselves up over something that's quite easy to sort.
Okay, so we have the motion in front of us, which is a revocation of motion, which Councillor Brown has moved. I am in support. Absolutely.
We moved too quickly on this one. We moved to get it to the next council meeting after the Town Centre Subcommittee, which gave staff not much time at all. If we'd done the process properly, it would be sitting at this meeting here today, probably with a lot more and better information. We moved too quickly. Myself and the 4 councillors seen that the process wasn't done right, so that's why it's sitting back here. They may not want, the other 4 councillors may not want to move it, they may, doesn't matter. They seen the process was not done right. So perhaps it can move, but let's do the processes properly. And obviously I'm supporting the motion.
Okay, so I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, now I wish to welcome representatives from Experience Mid-Canterbury. Who have we got?
Madam Mayor, can I just have some clarification? Will this issue now go back to the Town Centre Working Group? So, because we're back to where we were before we did this, but some decision needs to be made or suddenly we go nowhere and everything stalls.
And no lead given to the staff of what to do with it, other than it sits exactly where it is. And that's not helpful to anyone.
Through you, Madam Mayor, well, it's helpful in the sense that we now have a water feature that has got no decision of council to do anything with it. Therefore, it's staying exactly where it is, and the CBD redevelopment design will continue, taking into account that the water feature remains where it is, unless councils to instruct us otherwise. So currently, the water feature is on East Street.
Councillor Rawlins, Councillor Ellis, I'll
Thank you.
let you finish first.
Supplementary, there is another way of looking at that. You could carry on with your town centre redevelopment plan the way you want it, and then when the public see it, they may say, that's great, move the water feature then to achieve that. We actually haven't decided to leave it 100% where it is. We're actually saying to you guys, at the moment, we haven't decided definitely where to put it if it is moved.
Yes, I accept that. The only issue for us is that was the clarification we were seeking at the start, because in the end the design team have to take it into account or not. So, as I say, at the moment there are no decisions on moving the feature. That could change, but at the moment there are no decisions, and at the moment we would be proceeding on the basis that the feature is there, unless council instructs us otherwise.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. And just my question follows Councillor Ellis. I don't want to just stop it today. So my question is, do we need to take it back to the town working group to then come forward with an option for consultation?
Yes, that would be my preference. Councillors, do I have an agreement?
Sure.
Councillor Brown?
I don't think you can touch this for 6 months. But Philippa could inform us.
Okay, so if your motion to overturn the notice of motion had been lost, then yes, you couldn't have brought back any motion, a further notice of motion that was substantially the same or had the same effect within 12 months. But it wasn't lost, so you're left, as the Chief Executive has said, with no decision.
And we have some additional information from Mr McCann.
Through the chair, the CBD design is pretty much complete now, and we aiming to be going out to tender in October, November, and perhaps awarding the tender in December.
And by revoking the decision, essentially we have the water feature as is, where is.
It will remain as part of the design and be constructed. It will be constructed around the water feature, staying there.
Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to bring up something when we're talking about the town centre redevelopment. I hope the council violently opposes the application for resource consent to build down South Street, including shops.
Councillor Wilson, sorry, point of order. It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
No, that would have been at notification of extraordinary business. Right, so gentlemen, welcome. So we have Gary Lee, who is the Director of Experience Mid-Canterbury, and we have Bruce Moffat, who is the General Manager of Experience Mid-Canterbury. Welcome to you both. Councillors, could I refer you to the agenda to item 5.14, page 116. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. On submission of the report, I wonder if anybody had any comments to make.
Councillors, you've read the report. Do you have any questions? I have a question, please, Bruce, on page 118 of our report, the digital marketing, and I'm specifically referring to the post that you made about Fleetwood Mac. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I do note that Timaru District Council are in the habit of putting up large road warnings or road signs telling travellers to stop, have a break, have a coffee. I'm glad that we're on a digital format with that, but wondering if you've considered the other.
Yes, we have. We've been talking with Spraymark over the last couple of months. We were sort of issued a bit of a warning, really, in advance because NZTA watched the Main South Road quite heavily, and the conditions really were, yes, we could purchase the screen and talk the same language as what Timaru were doing. We'll put in something like, stay, play and eat. But there was a very good chance over the weekend that it would have to be removed off the Main South Road. So we're looking at an alternative and putting it onto Maronan Road. But we'll just see how we go. It's quite an expense.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Good afternoon, gentlemen. We've been discussing local government funding, and some of the proposals were regarding it should be more user pays. And one of the things they specifically mentioned was local government funding tourism. They said it should move away from ratepayer funding to funding by those that benefit. I've continually tried to get Experience Mid-Canterbury to increase the amount that local tourists fund instead of the general ratepayer providing a lot of your funding. What will your take be when local government New Zealand decides that every council should move away and let tourism fund itself?
Firstly, there is a lot of discussions around the IVL, which is the new international visitor levy that may or may not come into play and be able to fund tourism. My question back to your good self would be, what do you consider as a tourism operator? Because at the end of the day, the funds that we bring in, or the spend that we bring in, which happens to be $185 million, is actually part retail, it's part fuel, it's all sorts of things. So, there are a number of different, as you know, and through our statement of intent, there are 8 different categories that are recognised by tourism spend. I don't think I'd have any luck in being able to go out and talk to BP and Z and whoever else with MPD and say, hey, look, can you pay up, $295 in the first instance to be able to support us in tourism? It's just not going to happen. There are a lot of people in this district across New Zealand that don't understand where the value of tourism comes in, and there's only so much that we can do. The operators that we do have on board support us incredibly well, and we try and support them where we can as well, and that's the best we can offer.
And just that same question to Gary. Gary, if I understand correctly, and I'm looking at page 119 and I see that your time is just about up on Experience Mid-Canterbury, but if I understand correctly, you came from the West Coast and you're involved in retail and you see the benefits of tourism for a small area, in particularly around groceries and other amenities. Really keen to hear your perspective.
Absolutely. I suppose if you look at the West Coast in particular, it was slightly different, being such a large area, particularly Westland, with such a small rating base. However, it is reasonably well known that in Franz Joseph, for example, they ran a bed tax. So they could fund their own tourism to a certain point down there. Again, West Coast was very lucky that they had Development West Coast, which was a derivative from the government stopping logging, so there was money put aside for employment, and they were they gave money to Tourism West Coast, which was made up of Buller, Grey and Westland. And again, that was a very, very large area, particularly dominated by Westland from a point of the amount of tourists. Now, if you come to Mid-Canterbury is slightly different. We have a huge amount of passing visitors, and we also have some key people, notably the mountain, notably Methven, and notably the Ashburton attractions. So to obtain additional funding from, if you pick on individual people, it is very difficult. It is very difficult in the current economic climate that we are in to go and door knock on people and say, hey, give us more. You know, they are paying what they would suggest. And I'm a recent business owner to Ashburton, and we are paying high rates, of which we see some of that rates going towards the development of the town and the promotion of the town. So it is very difficult, and it's something that we look at as directors all the time. You know, unfortunately, we're getting a diminished budget every year, so we have to look very carefully at where we spend that money.
Councillor Brown, did you have a question?
The light's gone out. Just on page 118, just a question, please. The Eyesight Information Centre, you've got cross-booking sales, gross booking sales, I should say, and retail sales. So the cross bookings, is that for bus tours, ski passes, so you get a small percentage of that?
Yes, that's correct. So on average, that'll be buses, accommodation, any particular activity that perhaps the customer wants to book, and then where we get between a 10 and a 15% commission off that.
Yeah, and your retail sales are just the fluffy people. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Lovett?
I'm just going to ask about the G-Zone app. It's coming to an end, free. I mean, that's giving us some vital information. Is it going to be expensive to carry that on in future, or where do you see us going with that one?
It's a very good question. Firstly, GeoZone is continuing on with the reporting to local council, and Mr. Chief Executive has allowed us to have access to the data for the future, which is fantastic. And I've got to say, it's incredibly good information, as you suggested. There is also another piece that's going on at the moment, which is a national survey. Again, Mr. Chief Executive and myself have been looking at it in terms of what that looks like. I recently got hold of the research company's CEO to understand what the cost would be for us and what the process is. So a process, in its simpler terms, they're going to be getting a number of different regions in place, those who have more freedom campers or motorhome campers around the area than others, and then they'll put something together. Essentially, the report at the end is going to cost us about 10 grand if we wanted to get involved. So at our level, we would be looking at using the Campermate data only.
Subject to that, yeah, I think it's important we carry this on because it could be another form of tourism for us here, especially with all the motorhomes on the road. Because I know they're advertising at the moment farms and stuff for summer workers, and I wonder whether that's kind of a direction we need to look at in this county, is getting workers on the farm over the summer season and using those people that are on the road. Setting up facilities for them, and because I mean they're going to eat here, you know, buy food and everything else, and it could be a good form of tourism for us on the farms.
It definitely is, and in late September we are in Hamilton at the motorhome shows in the North Island, which is the New Zealand Motorhome Camp, and we'll be talking not only promoting but also talking about some of those initiatives as well in terms of, you know, do you need work whilst you're travelling? Interesting enough, I've just been at the Tourism Export Council of New Zealand conference, which is still going on at the moment up in Christchurch, and they're talking about that exact piece in terms of there are motorhomers and campers that we could get over here with visas and the valid visas that they could be travelling around New Zealand and offering their support in terms of work. So it's a great initiative.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. My question is regarding your marketing. You promote Mount Hutt and Methven just about principally. Your income from this council comes from ratepayers and business ratepayers, of course. I've never seen you promoting the Airport Museum, the Plains Museum, the Lake Hood. It seems to be everything you put out publicly, it's skiing and Mount Hutt.
At this time of the year, Councillor.
Hang on. Why do you not promote the rest of the district?
Well, firstly, if you've recently seen our video, which is the compilation video, and actually has 70% of the video is actually Ashburton and the wider district, and there's actually about 1% content in ski. We also did another set of videos that was all about everything other than ski, and then we've produced another video just recently that's just about the winter, and that's got about maybe 20% on Mount Hutt. So that we don't look at Mount Hutt as our main market. They are a very, very big supplier of tourism here, but it's not our primary focus. Our job is to get people into the district. Our job is not to individually promote every one of those over those products. You know, case in point could be skydiving Kiwis, for an example. You know, they would love us to be able to promote a little bit more. But the fact is that A, they're not a member, so that's a big downer for us. But secondly, we can't just be seen to be promoting one particular product, and we don't.
I have another question from Councillor Brown.
Thanks, team. We had Andrew Coleman from Heritage New Zealand a couple of weeks ago to talk. He was in town to open some or look at some heritage buildings, and he made comment to us that we have a lot of heritage in the district,
yes,
but he couldn't find a pamphlet or a something so he could go around and see it. So he left a note with us, and I don't know if anyone's told you or not, but he said there's some great heritage here, you need to promote it, because he would have been one that would have gone on a little trail around to see it. So I don't know if you've got the message or not.
No, I didn't. We do have a heritage piece in our website. There used to be a flyer that was distributed, and it was a heritage tour. And I spent quite a bit of time to try and understand who created it and you know, where it had sort of surfaced from. And I couldn't find anything. It said brown and gold sort of colour.
Yeah, I think it's the local heritage people here because they were here and discussed it.
Right.
But it probably needs refreshing and putting that pamphlet somewhere so people who want to do that sort of thing can. He said it's
always happy to do so.
Here.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Ellis and then Rawlinson.
Thank you, and thank you, gentlemen. Cycling's a huge thing now for tourists, and we actually have a fantastic cycle track that, you know, you can go now from the beach and go. There's about 70 kilometres of tracks now in our bike trail. So are we promoting that for the district? And I know, having been at the last River Trail meeting, there's talk again of connecting Rakaia, Methven and Ashburton into that big cycle trail, and just wondering if you gentlemen would be interested in maybe being involved in looking at doing some of that work and that, because we know how successful the rail trail is, and you always see these camper vans with bikes on the back of them, and they're looking for places to go and explore. So I think there's a huge area there as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I'll just give you a wee bit of background. I was on the original steering committee in Hokitika for the Wilderness Trail, and now that is finished, and it came at some cost, and there is a lot of government money available, but it is a huge success to not just Westland but Greymouth as well. So it's one thing that as a board we look at regularly.
If I could also add, we've just recently been talking to the previous Cycleway Committee, which is currently being held by Kelvin Holmes. And he had a committee together about, maybe about 8 to 10 years ago for a cycleway. And for some unknown reason, pre my time, it sort of didn't get off the ground. So we're wanting to bring a committee of people together to understand how we might be able to bring that bring that into place. And so we're looking to gather some more information in September once we're back from a lot of the other events that we're at. I understand that there is some funding still left for that particular event, and so we'll have a look at that in terms of how we could use that as well.
Councillor Rawlinson?
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce.
Sorry, I'll come back to you.
Just 2 points. The Heritage Trail booklet, I can tell you later exactly how that was derived and who did it, but it was the local heritage group that put it together many years ago, and it's slightly out of date. I just wanted to comment when somebody else said about bringing people to the district. I don't know the answer, and you work on it all the time, but we were recently accredited as a safer community, and I was at the function and met the chair of the Safer Communities for New Zealand, and he was a gentleman who'd stayed here overnight in our town the night before, and he told us, and Liz, Councillor McMillan will agree, he said, I had no idea your town and your place was so wonderful, and we want to come back and we want to spend more time here, which always raises the question in my mind, how do we get to the grassroots Kiwi to get them to stop in our town? And it takes something like that to get them here and get them to stop a while, take a breath and spend 2 or 3 days instead of passing through. But he said he had no idea about the Aviation Museum, what a beautiful domain we had, the EA Network Centre and Lakewood.
It's a very good point, and it's one that we've just been talking about in a big piece this morning, actually, in this conference, because every region is exactly the same. Domestic New Zealand is incredibly hard to measure and incredibly hard to market to. We can do everything from social media to physical events that may happen in Auckland or Wellington. Case in point would be the motorhoming experience that we have. The fact is, there's none of those types of events that exist, and for us to just be able to go and pop up at a plus location in the middle of Queen Street and do some work on the street would be really expensive for us to do. So there is actually a piece going on at the moment right across the whole nation, actually talking about how we might be able to look after the domestic customer a little bit more. In every single regional New Zealand profile, the domestic market is the highest spend out of everything. So, case in point in our instance. So we can continue to promote across all of the online spectrums. We also do a lot of newsprint. We use a company called Regional Directions and also Regional News. One is based in Auckland, one's based in Wellington. We try and get our message out there as well. But yes, it is a complex situation in dealing with your own people. They all, everybody knows where they're going. Everybody's probably got somebody that lives in the district they're going to. In some cases, we call that VFR. And so as I said, it's very difficult to be able to promote directly. But we're going to give it some great shots, and it's probably high time, given that we're potentially on the front of a recession right around the world at the moment, and so we might be left with just domestic marketing.
Councillor Ellis, did you have a supplementary before?
Just on your cycle trail thing, I'll talk to you later. There's a couple of names I'll give you who would like to be involved in that.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Bruce, just in regards to the New Horizons program and also your international marketing, I note that there are 23 Chinese trade-ready operators in our district. And I happened to be in Christchurch the other day and I saw someone proudly displaying Alipay. And I'm wondering where we're at with Alipay and how many of our businesses are using it.
I don't have an official number. Alipay is largely directed through the BNZ. There is an initiative that's been going on with Christchurch Airport for the last 18 months to try and get more and more people on board. There are some challenges around utilising that tool because you have to have a specific FPOS terminal, which they like to charge a whole lot more for, and there's also an additional transaction that goes with that as well. So it's not a payment system that that everybody wants to use. Okay. I'd suggest the major players here are certainly using Alipay, but I couldn't tell you.
Okay, and recently at the Canterbury Mayoral Forum, Mayor Sam Broughton stood up and talked about Destination South Island, and the data that he put up around tourism, and correct me if I'm wrong here, was about 80% of our tourism dollar is domestic. Is it that high? Am I
Yeah, that'd be,
remembering
in the South
correctly?
Island, it'd be 75 to 80%.
Okay, great, thank you. And while we do have you here, Gary, and I'm looking at the last page about the trustee service matrix, and I note just over your left shoulder, Bruce, we have Bevan Rickaby as well, who has resigned from your committee. I'm wondering if you'd like to give us your perspective as a board member, and I understand that applications are still open until tomorrow. Anyone who is interested in being a director of EMC can still apply, is that correct?
Yeah. From a board perspective, we've been very fortunate this year. We've had obviously Bevan on board as a newbie, but we've got two others, younger people who have brought some enthusiasm. One of them is a banker, so we've had some sound financial advice. And Sarah has great social media and from a young person's perspective. So I'm hoping to stand again, only for the sake that there might not be anyone else come along. No. Bruce is doing a great job for Mid Canterbury. He's to the forefront at all his things he goes to, but he's passionate about the area, which is probably the most important thing you can be. And because if you have that passion, you will pass that to the people that are interested and want to come here. And if we can get people to stay not 1, not 2 or 3 nights, then we think we're doing our job. And that's where I see my job as a director. We have parameters that we have to stick to, particularly as directors. We have limited finance, so it's important that we utilise that money at best discretion, and that's particularly because it's ratepayers' money. So yes, we'd like more. Whether we get it or not, that's the $64 million question. But certainly, as a region, for me, it's been completely different to the West Coast, and it is very exciting. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you coming to see us. If you'd like to wait for a few minutes, we're about to meet the new and long-serving staff of the Ashburton District Council, and then we break for a cup of tea, and we'd be delighted if you'd join us. So I now welcome Sarah Mosley, the Manager of People and Capability.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Today I'd like to introduce a number of new staff that I see in the back rows and interested to listen to the debate just prior. So if you can please, just when I call out your name, please stand so the councillors can put a face to a name. That would be great, thank you. So we've got Paula Martinez, and she is our Graphic and Multimedia Design Officer. We have Adela Shinan, and she is our Digital Communications Officer. We've got Bevan Rickaby, who is our Economic Development Manager. We've got Asheen Abasaka, and he is our Asset Management Engineer and Roading. We've got Nathan Dowler, and he's our Customer Service Representative at EA Network Centre. We've got Andrea Toms, who is our Swim School Coordinator, also at EA Networks. And we have Janice Mackay, our Welcoming Communities Advisor. So that is the collection of new staff here, and I've got one service milestone I'd like to present. And could I please ask Pam Speedy to come forward? So Pam started with us at ADC on the 28th of July in 2014. She was originally worked within the Domain team and had responsibilities to the southern part of the Domain. And more recently, Pam has moved into the town team within the Open Spaces group. During her time at ADC, Pam has been provided with a number of training opportunities and has been pleased to share that Pam has now a qualified traffic controller, STMS, first aider, chemical handler via GrowSafe, and has also recently refreshed her advanced driver training. So congratulations on the busy 5 years that you have been with us, and let's enjoy your milestone.
So may I just add, Pam, it's lovely to hear you've been here 5 years and the ongoing training that has been provided and the benefits that this district get through that training. To the new staff and to Pam in particular, can I say thank you for the work that you do and thank you for the work you are about to do. The reputation of this council and this organisation is in your hands, and we appreciate all that you do on behalf of the people of the district. So thank you very much. We're going to adjourn now until 3:30, so look forward to catching up with you. Thank you. Mr. Bert Hoffman, Mr. David Askin and Tony Durham here to present to us the draft Ashburton Domain Development Plan report. So councillors have read the report that is in the agenda and we are in your hands.
Thank you, through the chair. So we'll take the report as read. I'll just explain, I guess, why I'm up here with the team. From a consultation and engagement perspective, the strategy and policy team would be undertaking that for council. I just want to draw your attention to when this report was prepared. That was on the basis of the original decision regarding the water feature. So the domain development plan draft that you have, and that is up on the screen, still includes that. However, that is very simple to remove, and we'll update the plan accordingly. So happy to take any questions.
Councillor Brown.
Just one question, Tony. We gave 30 grand to do the Ashburton Domain and 15 to do Tynwald. Tynwald's not here. Is it coming soon, or where's it at?
Tynwald's been done and you've adopted it.
I must have been away.
Is it online? I couldn't find it. Actually, sorry, just on that point, like Councillor Brown, I had the same thought, and I went looking online, and I couldn't actually see it online. Is it available on our website?
Madam Chair, no, it's not available on our website, but it could be easily put on the website. It was adopted about a year ago, I think.
That would be most useful. Thank you. Are there any further questions? Just one small amendment. I note that we're saying that the Youth Forum was in May 2020. I'm assuming that was 2019, but yeah. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope the council does a lot of consultation, especially with one of the sporting clubs that's going to be drastically impacted, because no matter what people think, bowls is not a dying game, and it takes a long time and effort to establish a bowling green, and to ask them to shift, I'm sure there would be financial implications. I see nothing in our long-term plan to assist them.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, you're absolutely correct, Councillor Wilson. We will be undertaking extensive engagement and consultation with all parties that are directly affected and the wider community.
Councillor Reveley.
Okay, yeah, there's a consultation plan, and I'll be able to consult on this one and just be interested to see where you come from. There's several places in here I don't like, but that's what consultation's all about. So it's a pretty comprehensive document, and quite often the staff and the people opposing us can show why I'm wrong. So I think it's very well done, and we just need to move on, because I think it started a long time ago when you tried to get this first done.
Councillors, are there any further questions of the authors of the report? No, there being none. There is a recommendation. Councillor Reveley.
I'm quite happy to remove the recommendation 5.6.2 on the council receive the draft Ashburton Domain Development Plan and refers this for consultation. Incoming committee for adoption and consultation.
Now I see a flurry of lights, but the first light I happened to see was Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I second that.
So the matter is now open for debate. There being none, I will put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Page 34, item 5.7, the adoption of Plan Change 2, Ashburton District Plan. Thank you very much to the staff for your time. I welcome Ian Hyde and Jane Donaldson, who have prepared the report. Welcome Ian and Simon.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to explain the report that you'll have in front of you, this is the culmination of Plan Change 2 to the District Plan, which was intended to tidy up several factors that we found where the plan perhaps could operate, in our opinion, slightly more efficiently. We've now been through the submission process. Commissioner David Mountford heard the hearings, heard the submissions on recommended decisions and has made a recommendation which is attached to this document. And that is really the situation we're in now, where it's up to the council to decide whether or not to accept those recommendations. Just one point that we would make on the final page of the recommendations, there is a plan of the Tynwald domain and the proposed structure plan location with the railway line. I'd just like to make clear that that's not the total extent of the scheduled area. This is just the new scheduled area that's being added to the existing schedule. So just wanted to make it clear. It's this plan here.
Which is page number 56 in our
Yes,
agenda.
it is. Yes, it is.
Thank you. So, councillors, we have a very comprehensive report. Do you have any questions? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, it's a couple of questions, Madam Mayor. Page 45, point number 54. And it says, Mr Salter was not opposed to the change in principle, but highlighted a number of areas, a number of what he saw as deficiencies or errors. So how have you addressed those? Or have they been addressed?
Sorry, can I just get you to turn the microphone so the people who are watching online can hear you?
Okay. The Commissioner has asked us to work together with Mr. Salter and other submitters, Brian Lister, Mr. Calimo. So together we worked out the new proposals and submitted it to the Commissioner, which is part of his recommendations.
I think this is under the farming activity or intensive farming building size limit, is it? Number 54. Whereas Mr. Lester's on the Tynwald area, which is different. You'll have more experience at this than me.
Sorry, yes, through the chair, yes, that's correct, yes. Mr. Salter did submit on a couple of areas of the plan, but yes, the section you're referring to does relate to the standard section. This part of the plan change was actually recommended through the decisions or through the recommendations to be not adopted by the council because of some issues raised by Horticulture New Zealand. So if you follow the recommendations, this will no longer be relevant.
Yep, okay. And another question, might be a correction, 56A. Talks about, and it's from Horticulture New Zealand, 5.139 hectares of horticulture. Is that should be 5,000 hectares, would it? Rather than 5 hectares? 56A? Shouldn't have a comma in it. There should be nothing.
Through the chair, that's taken from a submission. We'd have to clarify whether that or not that decimal place is actually in the right place.
I don't think it matters, but
yeah,
I thought we'd have more horticultural land than that.
I think we've probably got more than 5 hectares, but yes, I'm not quite sure exactly. I'd be hypothesising if I was to say where the decimal place should be on that one.
Yeah, and one other question on page 48, number 77. He considers that council should withdraw Part B and subject to more careful analysis. I don't see a Part B, so it must have been withdrawn, I presume. It is, yeah. Okay.
Through the chair, that is in relation to the size of horticultural the buildings. Yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Reveley.
Okay, I took that one of the 5,139 hectares I took that's what it means. Is there any way of because this will be a final document, is there any way of having that 5,000 wouldn't be too far away from what we did? It's probably bigger than that. The amount of potatoes and processed vegetables we grow. Is there any way of making that into a comma or making it so it doesn't look like 5 hectares?
So Councillor Reveley, Jane may have the answer for you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we will check into that. As Ian said, it did come straight from a submission, but this doesn't go into the district plan. This is just the commentary that goes with the decision.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. Page 38, regarding the salmon spawning areas in the Rangitata River. I just found that a little confusing, having read it, and going to page 43 for the recommendation to Council, where in Part B the Commissioner says the submissions and further submissions in Part A be accepted and rejected in part accordingly. And I may have been reading it late at night on a plane coming home last night, but I found it confusing as to whether it has been accepted that the boats should not go in that spawning area in certain times of the year, or whether he rejected it completely. I just found the whole topic a little confusing as to what was the desired outcome.
Yeah, where the commissioner is referring to some of the proposal that was made by submitters which were not accepted, and others were accepted. But the final result is what is on page 52. That is what the commissioner has agreed with.
Councillor Reveley.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is just following up on what South Canterbury does, and these regulations, as written here, are the same as what you can get on your fish and game licence. So this is only sorting it out. So the other parts are already on the licence of where they can have boats.
So councillors, there is a recommendation there on page 34. Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask about the recommendation pot, the 5.7.2. It's just a brief description there, but is that all what entails in the bottom of page 50? Is that the whole recommendation, what we're doing? On the bottom of page 50 overall. So that is what that recommendation
Yes.
in brief is?
Yes.
Okay, no, that's all right. I'll be quite happy to move that.
You're starting at page 52. So the Chief Executive has just pointed out that if you turn the page to Appendix 1, and you're going 52, 53, 54, 55 and 56. Does that satisfy your question, Councillor Lovett?
Yes, because I was just making sure that B, the farming section, was out, because it needs update, further work on it. And if that's out of it, if that's what we're doing, I'll be quite happy to move.
So
5.7.2 recommendation.
Councillor Lovett has
I'll
moved.
second it.
Councillor Reveley has seconded. The matter is now open for debate. Yes, Jane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to point out that the fact that we need to do more work on that, in fact, the existing rule still stands. So just so there's no confusion about that. So we're trying to make it easier, but as it is, because it's withdrawn, we're still stuck with the one that we feel is a little bit onerous for people.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Brown.
Just following on from that, Jane, what's your timeline for that?
There isn't one at this stage.
You think we're looking at 6 months, 1 year, 2, 3?
We have started thinking about Plan Change 3, and so hopefully it will be in Plan Change 3.
So we have a mover in Councillor Lovett, a seconder in Councillor Reveley. The matter is open for debate. There being none, I will put the recommendation. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 5.8, page number 57, Bylaw and Policy Subcommittee. Thank you very much to the officers. And welcome Tony and Richard. So there are a number of recommendations. The first recommendation to Council on page 58 has been deferred to the 26th of September meeting. And then we have a recommendation 5.4, partnerships with private sector policy. Okay, I'm happy to move the recommendation. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Wilson has seconded. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. The next item is the review of smoke-free outdoor policy. Councillor Wilson.
I'll move recommendation. The council adopts option 1A status quo.
Second.
Councillor Wilson has moved. Councillor Brown has seconded. The matter is now open for debate. Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask, the Tynwald swimming pool, the lawn outside the entrance, is that covered in the smoke-free area? Because if it's not, I feel it should be, because a lot of cars pull up on that lawn and smoking right outside that entrance, where kids are coming in and out.
Barbecues there too.
Not right there.
Councillor Brown, do you have an answer for us?
Oh, no, sorry, I'm looking at one further. I just want to say you made a mistake.
Okay, so Richard.
No, it's my understanding that the area in front of the Tynwald Domain swimming pool is not covered by this policy. It's not one of the reserves that is listed.
So, Councillor Lovett, what I'm hearing is if you have concerns, contacting the Tynwald Reserve Board might be the place to do it. Okay, so councillors, we have a recommendation there. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay. Carried. We are now... we took them all in separate parts before, so we have a series there. Next, that council adopts 2B, makes smoke-free areas also vaping-free as its preferred option. Councillor Malcolm.
I'd like to move that with a change, right? Because I don't believe that, I believe that vaping is actually a means to try and get people off smoking. And I actually asked at the youth council the other day, we had a representative from the district health, it was the district nurse came along, and I asked her what the policy was of the district health board on vaping. They have not got a policy because they believe it's the better of the two evils. Okay, so that was her discussion to that. All right, so
if you are not moving the motion that is written here, what is the motion you are moving?
my amendment be just that option takes to be smoke-free, and that is all, right? There's no take away that also vaping-free.
No, this is...
No.
Through Madam Mayor, could we just refer to the staff as to what that option 2B was referring to, because it might only have been that it was to include vaping and nothing else.
Thank you, through the chair. So effectively what Councillor Malcolm is proposing is what the officer recommendation was, that council adopts option 2A, which didn't include a vape, the vaping.
Councillor Malcolm, you're happy with that advice? Okay, so Councillor Malcolm has moved 2A as clarified by staff. Councillor Brown.
2A. It's 2B. That's 2B to me, isn't it?
No, what I just heard.
Okay. I'm dead against it. I was going to push it as it stands. The reason is I spoke to staff at college. They really love this part in it, because it means they can say the Ashburton District Council doesn't allow vaping on smoke-free areas. He said, we've got trouble with guys who are smoking stuff in those pipes, so it shouldn't be there. So having this here as a council policy is really easy for us to handle it with our staff, our pupils, staff, I shouldn't say. So I'm dead against it, really. I'd like to leave it as it stands.
So Councillor Malcolm at the moment has moved the option of 2A as described by Tony in the previous document, and currently we're looking for a seconder if we don't get one. So Councillor Bell?
I'd like to second that. This one, 2B.
No.
The 2A.
Yeah, but he takes this out. So
No, we're doing the 2, you're doing the 2B, and he's got a different one. Yeah, no, I'll go for the 2B.
So you want
everything
in here?
Yep. I would like to second the 2B, wherein you, the smoke-free and the 2. Okay, no? Not that
Okay,
one.
so just to be crystal clear, Councillor Malcolm has moved and it was recorded in our paper as 2B, but we have been advised by... sorry?
Just to be clear, the officer's recommendation to the Bylaws and Policy Subcommittee was option 2A. At the debate at the Bylaws and Policy Subcommittee, the subcommittee had a preference for the alternative option, option 2B, and thus that is in front of you today as a council. And you'll please note I have avoided all Shakespearean references to this point, and it's taking a lot of self-control. Councillor Malcolm has moved, effectively he's moved the original recommendation that went from officers to bylaws and policy, which is option 2A, and as it currently stands, he is still in want of a seconder.
Thank you for articulating that so well. That was where I was trying to get to. Councillor Bell, you are no longer willing to second that? Councillor McMillan.
I will second the motion that Councillor Malcolm made. Thank you.
Okay, so we now have a mover and seconder, and the matter is now open for debate. Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. And I listened to a discussion and debate on this just in the last 48 hours and agree that a medical person was in the debate and said that the vaping is seen as a health measure to get people off cigarettes. And although I don't like seeing great puffs of smoke when people are vaping, I do agree that it is a better option than having cigarettes. So for that reason, I would support the amendment too.
Councillor Bell.
I would disagree with that statement. It might be healthy choice, but what are you saying to the young children? They cannot identify which smoke is going up the air. It's still smoking to the little children. So that means we're still encouraging the little ones.
Councillor Lovett. Your light's off, sorry.
I don't think we're sending out the right messages when you see a whole group of young ones now starting to vape. And I think it's very offensive when you're out dining and you've got all this waffling smoke going around you. I don't think we need to put up with it. And my daughter's just come back from Canada and she's saying there's a lot of young ones there now vaping and they've got other stuff in these cigarettes smoking, and we're going to end up with all that here as well. So I'm not supporting. I'd like to see us have the vaping free with the make it smoke free and vaping free.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. We're not banning vaping. All we're saying is in some certain areas, people...
Russell, can I get you to talk?
So we're not banning vaping. All we're saying in some areas you can't vape, same as you can't smoke in those areas. And they just tend to be higher density areas that fall under our control. So, you know, I wouldn't like to be sitting somewhere and have the person next to me smoking or vaping. And if that's their choice, then if they decide to do it elsewhere, but in those certain areas, that's the restriction we'll be putting on. I believe we should be.
Councillor Reveley.
Yeah, he says it well. I just totally agree with what he said.
Councillor Brown.
I'm exactly the same, but like I said before, college would be really in favour if you do it. If you don't, I think they want. Thank you for that. For the reason they can use it as well.
Councillor Urquhart?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with the last three speakers that, yeah, smoking, and it is only in these areas. There's other areas they can vape, and yeah, no, I don't go along with the motions on the table at the moment.
Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. And I've seen in the news as well that there has been a lot of coverage about vaping being a means of stopping smoking. I know a lot of people that do vape because they're trying to stop smoking, and they say that they will only be vaping for 6 months to a year because it just helps them, and then they completely stop. So the only problem is, yes, it's not a great look to our children, I get that, but how do we police it? If you've ever been in a park and seen someone sitting there smoking, it's not an easy thing to go up and say, hey, can you please put your cigarette out, you're in a non-smoking area. It's going to be even harder to do that if they're vaping. So I think leave it as it is. It was the original recommendation from the staff, and I'm happy with just the smoke-free area at this stage. Okay, Councillor Brown?
If this motion was passed, that means I could probably have a wee vape right here. Could I? I could. Yep. I might take it up.
Point of order is the council chamber's not a smoke-free area as well. Only smoke-free.
However, can I just clarify, at the bylaw and policy meeting, one of the questions that was asked was the definition of smoking, was it not, Mr. Brake? And did you not look it up, and did we not decide that it probably already includes vaping?
There was, I recall through you, Madam Mayor, the reference that Mr. Brake looked up did refer to tobacco and other drugs. So the definition of smoking covered that. And also my recollection was at the subcommittee that the group was looking to make it absolutely clear that vaping was included, as opposed to any doubt that was vaping a drug or was it tobacco or was it something else. And it was simply to remove any doubt that our smoke-free areas were to be smoke and vape-free. And there was a sort of a full stop at that point.
So Councillor Malcolm has moved, Councillor McMillan has seconded the option 2A from the original reports. Is everyone clear on what we're about to vote on? Oh, would you like the right of reply?
I would like the right of reply, please. I agree with you all about sending the right messages, right? Yes, we do, as councillors, have to send the right messages. We have staff that smoke on these grounds, tobacco, right? We have staff that smoke outside our front door of our building. Are we sending the right messages as a business or a company, right? So, how do we address those problems? And that's smoking tobacco. We were talking here vaping. It's steam, I believe, it's released. You know, so this is maybe we should investigate the sugary-free drinks thing. You know, like how, you know, what sort of messages do we have to send to the public, right? So, you know, if we're going to look at these vaping on our sports fields, there may be sugary drinks too. You know, and so that is my right to reply. Thank you very much.
Now, we'll save the latter part of your right of reply for another debate, but in regards to the smoke-free and vape-free, you've put your point, we've got the motion. I'm actually in favour of your motion, and I will put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No. I declare the motion lost.
Well, then Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor.
If I could, just to make sure it's option 2B, is that the one? Then I would like to move the recommendation 2B. Smoke-free areas, also vaping-free.
Yes. Okay, so Councillor Brahm has moved, Councillor Brown has seconded. The matter is now open for debate. There being none, I will put the motion, oh, sorry, Councillor Urquhart?
Yeah, I think what come up previously with council staff being able to smoke cigarettes, they can also vape. So I don't see this as just smoke-free areas we're talking about.
Councillor Brown?
Just to follow on from Councillor Malcolm's comments before, and council buildings is in this policy, and smoke is not permitted or vaping shortly, 10 metres from the entrance and exit to the building, and the Ashburton District Council chambers is in it, and the administration building is in it. So I won't be able to vape here.
Councillor Bell?
I would like to remind you of the definition of Mr. Brake's smoking. I have found it. Smoking, the action or habit of inhaling and exhaling the smoke of tobacco or a drug. An adjective, emitting smoke or visible vapor. So that it...
Excellent. So we will put the motion, moved by Councillor Brahm, seconded by Councillor Brown. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
Right, Madam Mayor, let's go.
Yes.
The next one, 3A, as it stands.
Councillor Brahm has moved. Okay. Councillor Brown has seconded. You're going to have to be a bit quicker, Councillor Lovett. All in favour, oh, sorry, open for debate. There being none, all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And another, Councillor Brahm.
No, keep going, I want to go home. A4A, as it stands, please.
And I second that.
Oh, no, Councillor Lovett beat you this time. Okay.
I'll be happy to second that.
Okay, all in favour, please say aye. Oh, sorry, my apologies, I have to retract that, yes.
It's on smoke-free outdoor dining areas. Does that now include no vaping on those dining areas?
No, but in about 4 minutes it will. Because your final recommendation on this report is to adopt a policy statement that encapsulates the 4 previous recommendations. And I think it's on page 65 of the agenda. And then there's a piece that's underlined there towards the bottom of the page. Council declares other areas under its control to be smoke-free via the Elderly Persons Housing Policy 2017 and the use of footpath for alfresco dining policy. So that is just ensuring consistency across those 3 policies.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Brahm, seconded by Lovett. Any debate? There being none, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. We have one last recommendation. Councillor Brahm.
I'm going again. That the council adopts the amended smoke-free outdoor area policies 2019 as per Appendix A attached to give effect to the recommendations 1 to 4.
Okay, Councillor Bell.
I would like to recommend to second it.
Okay, the matter is now open for debate. There being none, I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right, we're moving. Sorry, okay, I was just going to get you to turn the microphones on. 5.9, Development and Financial Contributions Policy Scope for 1920. Can I say, as we receive this report, thank you for the work that has been done thus far. It is a very comprehensive and useful report. I'm looking at Tony, who is deferring to Richard. So Richard, thank you for the work thus far. Councillors have read it. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I thought we were going to put in water meters policy in there.
It's my understanding that at a recent, may have been Finance and Business Support Committee, you identified some issues to be addressed through the revenue and financing policy, which is the next item on the agenda.
Councillor Brown.
Oh, sorry.
Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillor Brown?
Just in the actual recommendation itself, number 2, the council adopts option C. Should it be 3?
Okay, so we're changing the word from from option C to option 3 as detailed on page 73. Yeah. To all preferred.
Just have one question.
Please.
On page 70, the rates in the DC trade-off. It's unclear to me how they trade off at saving, or the 1.37 that's collected equates to 3.7 of rates, where one's a capital expense, where rates are a day-to-day expense. I'm just trying to find that relationship you've got there.
If you weren't funding that $1.37 million from development contributions, whether it's, and you're absolutely right, a development contribution is a capital contribution. If you weren't funding it from a development contribution, you'd have to fund it from some other source. And that source would either be rates, or it would be a loan, which you would then be servicing through rates. So, and this is one of there are a number of areas too in your current revenue and financing policy where you describe how you fund the operational expenditure, and then you turn to capital expenditure and say, we fund our capital expenditure the same way as we fund our operational expenditure. So it isn't necessarily true that you don't fund any capital expenditure from rates, because you do. And it is correct that development contributions is to meet capital expenditure demands.
Councillor Erkin?
With having been involved with these contributions and things, I can accept these contributions being paid on a development within the development, but I believe it's pretty unfair, unless you absolutely want to squash development in this town, to charge development contributions to a developer to put infrastructure in on council-owned areas. When it comes to the zoning of land, it should be considered that the council should actually front the bill to put the infrastructure in, so the developers can connect to it. I'm not saying councils should pay the development contributions within the development, but to their boundary, it should be the ratepayer that actually pays that, not the developer, because it's to the advantage. The ratepayer's getting that infrastructure pretty much for nothing, and it should be built into when somebody joins that, like a wastewater connection, or as it is, or a water connection. The development contributions are paid then, not actually by the developer when he develops. Otherwise, you absolutely squash it, or make the cost of somebody buying a section prohibitive, unless you're the council.
And do you have a question there for the officer?
Well, pretty simple. Do you think that's fair?
One of the realities about my role and your role is that one of us gets to decide what's fair and one of us doesn't. I don't get to decide what's fair, you get to decide what's fair. because you are the people elected by the community to make those kinds of judgments. The idea behind a development contribution is that growth pays for growth. And so you've got to be really careful when you're developing a development contributions policy to make sure that you've identified only the capital expenditure required by growth and not the capital expenditure required for renewal, not the capital contribution that's funded by third parties, and a host of other elements that are potentially could be wrongly charged to developers, so that the developer is only paying the marginal cost, so that growth is only paying for growth. On top of that, the council can do the technical work, be satisfied that growth is paying for growth, and still has the opportunity to make a value judgment about whether, when growth pays for growth, whether it is actually imposing a cost on development that is a barrier to development. And so the council could make a decision, having done some detailed work, that actually only wants to recover 40% of growth from growth, because it recognises that by the ratepayer making a larger contribution, it brings other benefits to the district. And that sort of judgment is all about fairness and equity, and about the vision you have for this community, and about the right way to achieve it. And you're the people mandated by your community to make those judgments. So if at the end of this work and you've developed a policy and someone asks me, is this a fair policy? I'll say, yes, it is, because the people elected to decide what's fair for this community said it was so.
Great answer. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam. Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm opposed to transportation being part of it. Drinking water, wastewater, so on, are individual things that people that pay the development, it's something that they gain personally. Transportation, are you going to say to somebody that wants to upgrade a road, you've got to pay a development fee to upgrade it, but I'm going to let everybody else in the district travel on my road that I upgraded because it's upgraded and everybody wants to use it? With water and that sort of thing, and wastewater, the individual that pays the development fee has got exclusive use of it, virtually, especially if it's for development. Whereas transportation, it's all very well to say if a farm is developed, it uses the road more. His valuation has gone up to a lot higher, and they're already going to pay a lot higher rates. Rural people pay a huge amount towards the roading rate as it is. Are you going to penalise them even further so that everybody else can travel on a better road? I'm opposed. I think we should stay at option A.
Councillor Brown.
I'll move the recommendation as it stands, 1 and 2, and all that Councillor Wilson just talked about will be discussed when we review it, so he'll get to have his say once we're reviewing this policy. But at this stage, put everything in and we talk about everything, and we may take transportation out, we may leave it in, we will make a decision on it. So I'll move the recommendation as it is.
Thank you. Councillor Ellis.
I will second that, and for the same reason. Once we have all the information and facts and figures in front of us, then we can make those decisions, what's in, what's out. But we need to review it all to get to that point.
Councillor Reveling.
Well, I'll be with Councillor Wilson, because we'll be doing a finance and revenue policy way before we do this again. So the next policy will show this, that you're going to do it this way. So Councillor Wilson, I believe, on the right track.
Okay, so we have a motion, and I too will be supporting the motion for the reason that I think it's important we review the entire range that we have. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Brown?
Just one more time, exactly what are we doing? As it stands, 5.9.2?
It was 5.9.2 with one amendment, and that is part 2 has changed from option C to option 3.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine.
Excellent. So I will put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I declare the motion carried. So 5.10, Revenue and Financing Policy. Tony, we're in your hands.
Thank you, through the chair. Excuse me, I can't take credit for this report. This has come from Rachel, who has now gone home unwell. So I'll do my best to answer your questions. I just want to clarify for you with the recommendation. We've got an error here as well. The recommendation under 5.10.2, number 2, should actually say that Council adopts option 3, do most, as its preferred option for the scope of work. So we have that in the narrative, but it hasn't come through to the recommendation. I apologise.
Councillors, are there any questions? There being none, and with that amendment, I'm happy to move the recommendation as written at 5.10.2. Councillor Bell.
I'd like to second it.
Councillor Brown?
You got a second?
Yes, Councillor Bell has seconded.
No, I oppose the recommendation. I would be looking at option 2. Option 3 is doing everything, whereas we've just done it 18 months ago, where option 2 would be just to focus on the funding of water races, funding of drinking water, funding of rural surface water, and leave the rest alone, because we've just only done it 18 months ago, and the chances of us changing it would probably be slim. So I'll oppose, and if it's lost, I'll be moving that we do option 2.
Okay, are there any further speakers for or against? There being none, I will exercise my right of reply, and that is, yes, we did do a review at the last long-term plan, but as we have recently discussed at meetings, probably in the last few weeks actually, that there seems to have been a habit where we pick up our revenue and financing policy and we review it from last time. And that issue seems to have been going on for, I don't know, when was the last comprehensive review actually, Tony, do you know?
Through the chair, I'm not sure, sorry.
For a long, no, it's not 18, sorry. Would you have called the one 18 months ago a comprehensive review?
Through the chair, using the scale that we've got here in front of us, we would have considered it to be a do minimum approach that we took 18 months ago.
And so the question I asked Tony just then was, when did we last do a comprehensive review? And I did not, there was no definite answer on when it was, so it's a long time ago. So for that reason, I think that option 3, as moved by myself and seconded by Bell, it is time that we do a thorough review of the revenue and financing policy, and I will be supporting it. So I will put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Aye. I'll declare that. Call for a show of hands. Those in favour, please raise one hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I declare the motion carried. And for those against, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. And Councillor Brown has asked that his vote be recorded. Councillors, we're now on page 89, 5.11, Local Government Funding and Finance. And can I thank officers for the work that they've done in summarising the Executive Committee thoughts. If anybody needs a hard copy, Philippa has a copy up here. So there was a report sent separately to you. Councillors, have you seen it? Item 5.11. And it has been emailed to you. Okay, there are 2 recommendations. Number 1, that Council receives the report, 2 parts to the recommendation. Council receives the report and Council approves the submission to the New Zealand Productivity Commission. Councillor Ellis, would you like to move? Yep.
Madam Mayor, happy to move. Has everyone got the information that they're looking for? I'm hearing some people beside me, not sure.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor McMillan. It was sent on the 14th at 1 p.m. Okay, so Councillor Ellis, there's a recommendation there on page 89.
I've got it. Yeah.
So everyone now has that in front of them. Recommendation, the council receives the report and that council approves the submission to the New Zealand Productivity Commission.
I'll second it.
Okay, so Councillor Ellis has moved, Councillor Wilson has seconded. The matter is now open for debate. There being none, I will put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Next is the Mayor's report, page 93. And councillors, I'm open to questions if there are any. There being no questions, I will draw your attention, please, to the bottom of page 96, Medical Students Community Contact Week. Councillor Lovett.
I would actually like to see that this year go to the refugees that are coming into this district as something tangible, not going into someone's administration.
And Councillor Lovett, to do so, we need an organisation. Who do you
Okay.
think the organisation would be?
Probably the lead organisation that's actually, do we know who's doing it at the
Not yet.
moment? Because I know Red Cross deal with them, the refugee settlements.
No, sorry, Tony. The provider for Ashburton has not yet been decided and won't be known until probably October. So we don't know who the organisation is providing that service here.
Tony, do you have any additional information you'd like to add?
Through the Chair, I was just going to reiterate what our CE has just provided you with. An organisation that is planning a lot of work in this place is the organisation formerly known as the Newcomers Network. They are the Hakateri Multicultural Council now. So I know for a fact they have a lot of work planned.
Councillor Lovett.
I would be happy if it does go through the Multicultural Council to the refugees, the new ones coming into the district.
So Councillor Lovett has put the recommendation that the University of Otago medical students donation of 500 be given to the Hakateri Multicultural Council. Councillor Bell.
I would agree with that one because, yeah, it's really a good cause.
So there is a mover and a seconder. Councillor Wilson.
I'm opposed.
Okay. Councillor Reveley.
Do we know that this group's going to be allowed to do anything with the refugees? Because that part of it's not known yet. They may be excluded.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. We have the same thing through the Methven Community Board, and we usually go to a charity or a volunteer organisation, and I mean, the Multicultural Council would be worthy opponents, but I think we can look outside the square as well, and there may be some other worthy recipients.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'll also oppose, and if it's the motion is lost, I'll be recommending that it goes to Ashburton Palliative Care, and they're a very deserving organisation, and I know they're doing a lot of work out there, and know firsthand the work they are doing. So I'll be recommending palliative care if this motion is lost.
Councillor Rawlins.
I would support Councillor Brown. I think we're just 1 year too soon to be donating to the refugees. I think we need to see the structure put in place first before we donate to something that's still not quite settled. So I support Councillor Brown's recommendation.
Councillor Bell.
In addition to what Councillor Lovett had explained, we can give this with an understanding that it will really go towards the refugees. It doesn't have to be the administrative part of the Multicultural Council. It could be very specific to where it goes.
Councillor Ellis.
There will be an approved provider of services from this district for that purpose. And until we know who that is, I'm not sure how we can give them money, because it may not be that particular organisation. And then if we give them the money, I'm not sure how they would then distribute it to that group of people. So until there is an approved provider, and I believe there are at least 2 tenderers for that service, I don't know how we can give them money.
Councillor Wilson?
Yes, why I'm opposed is I agree with Councillor McMillan. We've always supported voluntary organisations, and when we accepted that to bring refugees to this district, the government guaranteed that we'd provide all services by the state. So, I mean, at this stage, if we sign next year, there's a gap that we can fill, fair enough. But at the moment, it's the promises the state has made that they will provide all services that's needed. So I think we're a bit premature.
Okay, so we've heard the discussion, we've got a motion. I'll put the motion, I will not be supporting it. So all in favour, please say aye. Oh, sorry, the motion that is written, that Councillor Lovett moved, that the University of Otago medical students donation of 500 be given to the Hakateri Multicultural Council is the motion we're debating.
Can I?
No, I was actually very tolerant that you seconded the motion and you spoke, so no, sorry. I'll put the motion, all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. My apologies, I retract that. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. So I declare the motion lost. And Councillor Brown, you had an alternate?
And I'll put in the gap, the medical students donation be given to Ashburton Palliative Care.
Okay, that's
I'll
a mover.
second- I'll
And
second
Councillor
that.
Rawlinson has seconded. It's now open for debate. Councillor Bell?
Looking at all the agencies that have received from 1998, I look at it like the Blanket Society had only been once in 2000, so I reckon they should get it this year if our choices are just those listed up there. I just look at it, how often did they get, and like 2016 and 2017, the Hospice Mid-Canterbury, they both got it the same year. And
So
then the,
Councillor Bell, you either need to move an amendment.
I would like to move the amendment, please, to give it instead to the Blanket Society.
Just clarification then, is hospice care at Canterbury the same as Ashburton Palliative Care? They're 2 different organisations.
Okay, so Councillor Bell has moved an amendment. We're seeking a seconder. Councillor Bell, I declare that
That's okay.
not seconded and therefore lapsed. So we're back to the motion moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Rawlinson, that the recipient will be palliative care. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Councillors, you will have received this Canterbury 2019 overview via email. It was sent separately. And that came from the Mayoral Forum in preparation for the 4 Wellbeings. Yes, you've all had it. That's good. So it was sent separately. Yeah. And the other thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the Heinz Hekio Water Enhancement Trust for the MAR project. And there is a request there. And I am hearing that a report would be appreciated before any consideration given. Am I hearing correctly that that is your desire? Mr. Chief Executive, do you think it possible that we could have a report either to service delivery or the next council meeting? Which do you think most achievable?
Well, either. We will meet council's request, and we can certainly bring it to the council meeting on the 26th if that meets your need.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. On the bottom, they've got a reference there, grant funding request. we have a policy around grant funding. Why aren't they falling into that and being directed to our grants funding criteria? I'm just worried that this will set a precedent for groups to bypass our funding policy, and just if they write a letter to the mayor, it can come to council and we can approve money.
Great question, Councillor Ellis. And could I remind you that we had, at the time of formation, the Heinz Hekio Water Enhancement Trust come to council with their founding document. And we are party to the Heinz Hekio Water Enhancement Trust. You will recall at the stock water submissions today, a couple of the presenters also referred to the Heinz Hekio Water Enhancement Trust. We as a council, and through the Zone Committee, and Councillor Wilson may correct me on this, have supported MAR and have supported TSAs, and we've put it into many of our documents around water management. Therefore, I think we are a party to this, and it is slightly different to the grants scheme. Even though the word grants may have been used, I think it outside that scheme, but I'm happy to take advice from the Chief Executive on this one as well.
Slightly. You can interpret it either way, I suppose. In the end, we can, by council's will, defer it to a separate consideration, or again, by council's will, we can take it to the council meeting.
Councillor Wilson, as our representative on the Zone Committee and now actually the Zone Committee representative on the Regional Water Committee, is there anything you wish to add? Because I know that this is a trial that is being exemplared as doing great work. And could I get the microphone on, please?
Yes, I was actually in favour of making that money available. We've got immediately, if they need it, they've got ECAN 125,000, and my idea was that once they used that up and the Provincial Growth Fund had come through, they wouldn't need any from us. But we've got money from last year's business development account that could cover that as an emergency to keep the MAR project going until the Provincial Growth Fund makes up its mind. If the Provincial Growth Fund says no, there'll have to be a major reconstruction of their future program. As the Mayor says, the whole of New Zealand looks to the MAR project as a sort of more or less as a trial, or how things that can be done in other districts. So to me it's imperative that it keeps going and doesn't stop, because they have got plans, and it will not only be the south of the district, it'll be the north of the district in future that'll be used too. So I think it's important that we make it there as an emergency money if they possibly going to run out before the Provincial Growth Fund.
Councillor Reveley.
Okay, MAR is supported by the Zone Committee, not run by the Zone Committee, and at this stage there's no talk of an input from the farmers, and so I see that as a discrepancy which needs sorted. I know, talking to Rab McDowell, who's had a fair bit to do with this, he was hoping 2 years ago that something was out there, so it wasn't going to be just ratepayers' money or somebody else's money, that all farmers were going to have, and they were looking for a rate to run this. And this council has already been reasonably generous with 500 litres a second. You put that over the 5 years and you filled the Klondike Dam a few times, or more than once. So there's been a reasonable bit of generosity on the water, but I would like to think that there's some more homework done from that MAR committee to actually see whether it's going to be a rate or there's going to be an input from all farmers or some farmers, because at the moment it's just a straight handout. So, and I was surprised that the government didn't look to see a contribution from the people that were involved in it.
Councillor Ellis.
Okay, I'm also opposed. Yeah, I don't see how it fits into economic development. I see very little financial benefit to the district from this. I know it's a project that's a leading light project, and we had one very, very good site that was proving its worth, and we seem to now jumped to somewhere where we can't afford to be instead of staying within the means of that group. So I don't think they can live on handouts.
So, Councillor Ellis, at the moment, the Mayor's report states that we'll ask for an officer's report for around this request to the next service delivery meeting. Are you opposed to having a report? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Brown.
No, I support a report coming to service delivery with, and obviously be a business case and a bit more information, more detailed information around it. I like the idea of the whole thing, but just need a bit more information before we give the monies.
Yep. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, and I'm the same. I'd like to see a report first. I think MAR is important to our district, but we need to see all the facts and figures first.
Councillor Revelling.
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned it before. And there must have been a reasonable report done to come to the figures that 900,000 was needed and to go to Shane Jones. So there has to be reports out there to have done any of this work. All we need to do is see it, and even people like me may be convinced.
Okay, so just to dot the I's and cross the T's, I will move that Council has requested a report from staff to the service delivery meeting on the request from Dr. Brett Painter. Councillor McMillan.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And in doing so, can I add that earlier today we identified that perhaps we we missed an opportunity to take our community with us on a particular project. I think the same can be said for the MAR project. And what I'm seeing, and correct me if I'm wrong, perhaps Mr. McCann, is when the MAR governance group got together and did some work, there was not a governor on that committee, and we were very absent of reports coming back, and it was an issue that we tried to identify, but I don't know that we've caught up. And so to have a new group and to have this request, we seem to have some gaps in our information. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. So how much work are you asking staff to do here? Is it just go and pick up their report and present that to us, or do you want our staff to do some investigation? And if so, what cost will that incur? Because if it's going to end up costing 50,000 to write the report, we might as well just give them the 50,000. So, you know, do staff know what you're actually asking them to do?
It will be done by officers, so I can guarantee it won't cost $50,000. But we would probably benefit from additional clarity from council as to exactly what is expected in the report. There was some debate at the something meeting that the mayor's suggestion originally went to. It's a submission workshop, was it? So there has been some preliminary discussion. We will ensure that we get the notes from that meeting to further inform the work that now needs to be done. But any additional clarity that councillors can give us would be appreciated.
Councillor Brown.
I'm sure the work's probably been done. ECAN gave 125,000. I'm sure they just wouldn't have given it. They must have done a report must have gone to their council to do that. A request has gone to the Provincial Growth Fund. There'll be lots of figures and business case around that. That's probably what we need.
The Provincial Growth Fund, if we've seen all what was there, the work had to be done for them to even come up with a figure of not just a guess of $1 million.
You're absolutely right, and there is a report out there, and I'm quietly confident that Dr. Painter would share that report. He has also offered to do a workshop if that would help as well. Yeah.
Probably, as chairman, we were hoping that you were going to have that information for us. So obviously you were short of that information as well.
I have not got it on me today, and I have a plethora of information running around my head on many issues. I can't, with crystal clear clarity, provide you what that would be. Councillor Ellis.
Just in that report, can we get a link to our surface water strategy and how that's all going to tie? We're doing this overarching thing, but all these things keep popping up under it. Unless we link it all together, we're going to have all these little bits and pieces out there.
Absolutely agree. And Councillor Wilson?
I think the MAR project is completely separate to the surface water strategy because it's going to be run by this trust, and the surface water strategy is, to me, is a different animal completely. We will be managing the surface water strategy because it's our water type thing. That's what we're handling, whereas the MAR project is more of a district-wide thing that will include, you talk about farmers not paying. I was hoping that this MAR Trust, that one of their projects is to come up with how they fund themselves. Obviously, the Provincial Growth Fund is a temporary thing because when that's money spent the following year or whenever, they're going to have to come up with a way to long-term funding.
And on that point, I can add that the discussions are being had. Yeah, but Councillor Wilson, thank you for that. That's really useful, and I'm looking forward to seeing a report. And can I just remind you, it was just 2, maybe 3 meetings ago that we had the Heinz Hekio Water Enhancement Trust trust deed in front of us, and we are party to it. Councillor Brown. Your light's gone off.
The Super Rugby final, you were a guest of the Stadium Complex Trust? Yes. Is that our trust or is that someone else's? Is it the Ashburton Stadium?
No, so it's the Christchurch Stadium Trust.
Because I thought we'd wound our one up, have we not? We're about to.
You, Madam Mayor, we're on the last stages of the Ashburton Stadium Complex Trust being wound up. We're just waiting for their final set of accounts.
One other question, we met, I was there for half at the Rakai Library and Community Association reps come in. Have we had an outcome of to where we got to with them?
Yes, I will forward you a copy of the letter.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor McMullen.
Can I just ask the question? On the Canterbury Wellbeing document, is that a public document? Because I think it would be quite beneficial to safer Ashburton on to our safer communities.
Through you, Madam Mayor, are you referring to the overview that was prepared by the Secretariat? My understanding of it, no, let us clarify.
Okay,
There was some hesitation for that to be public,
okay.
but I can't quite remember whether we resolved that or not.
Thank you.
Excellent. So, Local Government New Zealand Conference and Sector Meetings, item 513, page 109. Councillors, did you have any questions around the outcome of the remits? And you'll note that councillors who have been in attendance have submitted their summations as well. It's interesting, you'll get same people at the same conference but picking up different snippets. Councillor Brown.
Just on the council remits, last year some remits went in. Did they say at the conference what they did with last year's remits?
Councillor Bell and Chief Executive Riak and Councillor Wilson, I think you were with me. They did briefly talk about the successes of what had transpired last AGM and what was coming this time. Unfortunately, I haven't reported it. I do apologise. We were pretty focused on the fact that we had a record number of remits going through this year. The driver's licensing, I know, is an issue that you're questioning as well. Under the Mayor's... Yeah. So assisting with driver's licence and driver training in the rural areas. I know that that is progressing and conversations are still being had with central government. I can't with clarity remember all of them though, sorry. Councillor Wilson, do you recall any of them?
Not last year's ones, I wasn't there, but this year's ones, a lot of them are aspirational things. For example, you know, single-use polystyrene be phased out. Let's use environment-friendly weed killer. Ban on sale of fireworks. Well, all those are government things. Local bodies, local government New Zealand are very inspirational, or what they think is inspirational, making these recommendations, but they can't enforce if it's an outside organisation. A lot of them is government policy, like Resource Management Act changes. I mean, local government can recommend to their heart's content. It's a government policy, so that was the only thing that surprised me. A lot of these inspirational do good things, where are they actually leading to? Whether we've actually, local government New Zealand doesn't seem to have as much clout. The government obviously look at them and ignore most of them.
Through Madam Mayor, I think the purpose of the remits at a Local Government New Zealand conference is to inform the Local Government New Zealand executive how they should position their advocacy program. So you're quite right, they're not the decision maker, but it does mean that if a remit is passed with significant support, then Local Government New Zealand can be confident that they're representing their members, i.e. all the councils, when they have these discussions with government.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In your statement, Councillor Wilson, it might just be a wish list, but I think the collective local government elected officers has got a voice to the central government. It might not happen, but eventually they will hear from the voices of the ratepayers. So it's one way of telling them our opinion.
Councillor Lovett.
I'm just looking at short-term guest accommodation. Are they aiming on that one for tourist towns, or is it kind of every town in the country? You know, I was just thinking of Meath, and half the town will be paying guest accommodation. And I look at the guests now, they're paying like $35, aren't they, to come in through airports, and this will be another kind of tax imposed on them. We're just making ourselves very expensive.
Waterton might be too.
Sorry, Councillor Reveley, can you repeat that with the microphone on?
I just see the tourists should be paying, no matter where they are, because that's just part of your travel. I live, what, 38 k's out of town. It cost me to get to town. Does somebody want to subsidise that just because they live in town? Just as a councillor, we've got to pay our way for where we are.
So yes, it did go through with 70% support from the sector. We voted as this council had instructed us to do, and I think if I recall correctly, we were in the 30%. Yeah. Councillor Wolfson was keeping me honest and sitting there making sure I voted the right way on all of the items. Councillor
I see the
Reveley.
greenhouse gases, so I would have to make sure that we employed it for the RMA on greenhouse gases. Going to decide through the RMA Act that only people employed that didn't believe in carbon, zero carbon, was employed as our managers of that department.
Councillor Reveley, I'm struggling to keep up. It's really useful if you're telling us, you could give us the number. So now I've just caught up 17, yes? Yes, thank you.
Just see on that one, you put not what I said the first time, we put a real onus on our staff. If an RMA is going to try and decide what zero carbon is on a resource consent. I think it's just too tough, but I see it did pass with 64%, and that's nonsensical by very clever elected people.
So Councillor Reveley, just to reiterate the Chief Executive's point, this is about council members telling the LGNZ executive where to position themselves. And they also then test how strong the support is around it. And at 64%, they get the mood of the whole membership. Councillors, no further questions? Then that the report from local government conference and sector meetings be received. Councillor Brown, happy to move. Councillor Rawlinson has seconded. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. That brings us to the end of our public part of the meeting. Can I thank you all for your participation, thank you to officers, and thank you to those who've been watching at home. Thank you. Stretch, toilet break, back in 2 minutes. 4 minutes maybe.